I ascend to the throne of God with arcane magic. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, The Power of Faith. Triumphal Square, the holy festival of the Kingdom of Fez. As the salute sounded, Morton Fez, wearing a luxurious golden robe, slowly walked to the high platform in the center of the square under the escort of a group of people. Stepping on the long red carpet, passing the knights who drew their swords to salute, His Majesty the King climbed the steps step by step and sat on the throne that symbolized the most honorable and privileged position in the kingdom. Morton Fez's face looked much better than the first two times Lisi saw him. His face was ruddy, his eyes were bright, and he smiled and gestured to the nobles who were saluting around him. Maybe it was also a cover-up to reassure the people of the kingdom. After all, Morton Fez was hailed as the most wise king since the establishment of the kingdom, and was the sole figure of the kingdom of Fez's rise to become the strongest kingdom in the East continent. It can be said that the news that he was about to die would cause a storm. However, Lisi knew that Morton Fez took a long time to die, paving the way for Teia to smoothly take over the power of the kingdom. After King Morton sat on the throne, the holy festival officially began. In recent years, the holy festival celebrations have been hosted by Duke Hader. First of all, there are sacrifices and blessing ceremonies to the god of dawn and the goddess of the earth. As the main belief of the Kingdom of Fez, the Dawn Church naturally occupies the majority of believers in the kingdom, but this does not mean that there are no beliefs in other gods. For example, many gods such as the goddess of the earth and the god of war have believers and churches in the Kingdom of Fez, and there are even large and small beliefs in gods that are spread everywhere, but the scale is far less than that of the Dawn Church. The Dawn Church does not have the intention of completely prohibiting the spread of beliefs of other gods, but at most it just excludes and squeezes them. In the Kangwang city, there are churches of other gods' churches, which are much smaller in scale, and have no strong men stationed to guard them. Other gods' churches all tacitly assume that the Kingdom of Fez is the base camp of the Dawn Church, and vice versa. As a sequence of righteous gods in the human god camp, they still maintain a relatively harmonious state internally under external pressure. After all, arbitrarily targeting other gods' believers will cause a war of gods. However, for those evil god churches, there are not so many requirements. During the holy festival, the gods worshipped in the kingdom's celebrations were the god of dawn and the goddess of the earth. The god of dawn was naturally the main object of worship. The royal family members, officials, nobles, and most of the people of the Kingdom of Fez believed in the god of dawn. The goddess of the earth was quite special. After all, the holy festival was a festival to celebrate the harvest and pray for good weather in the coming year. As the goddess of the earth, who possessed the priesthood of earth and agriculture, she was naturally a god closely related to the harvest, and was therefore also worshipped. All the nobles and officials of the kingdom who attended, in turn, presented a golden ear of wheat with full grains to the statues of the god of dawn and the goddess of the earth. His Majesty, accompanied by the second prince, Yatan, presented the two gods with the most abundant fruits and vegetables in autumn, and white bread that had just come out of the oven and still exuded the fragrance of the sun. After the pastors of the Dawn Church and the Earth Church brought the frang flowers and pansy flowers representing the god of dawn to the altar, and sprinkled them with clove essential oil and benzoin essential oil, all the people present bowed their heads and prayed to the two gods. The residents around the square were the same. There were even devout believers who knelt on their knees and put their hands together to pray silently. Thank you for this year's harvest and peace. Pray for peace and good luck in the coming year. Although Lisi did not believe in the two gods, or was just a shallow believer, he couldn't help but be a little serious under the influence of this solemn atmosphere, and then bowed his head and silently recited two sentences in his heart. At this moment, Lisi seemed to feel something. I don't know if it's because I have been in contact with the power of the gods many times, or I have looked directly at the gods. Lisi felt that there was an inexplicable power slowly wandering around him, gathering from all directions to the statue. This was the first time Lisi encountered this situation. He carefully looked around and had some guesses in his heart. A trace of power continued to float from the people who were praying quietly around the square, but the inexplicable power on the nobles was much less. This inexplicable power continued to condense in the two statues, and the divine power fluctuations that made people peaceful and strong spread from the statues to the surroundings. At the same time, the statues began to emit a pale white light. After feeling the wonders on the statues, the people could not help but become more devout in their faith. Li Si clearly saw that two illusory doors opened on the two statues, constantly accepting the power condensed in the statues. Could it be that what he felt was the power of faith, the root of the gods? No wonder there was such a big battle, and the power of faith was indeed very important to the gods. Li Si secretly paid attention. Although these powers of faith were still far away from him, they were the roots that all the gods were fighting for after all, and there must be great secrets in them. After the priests of the Dawn Church and the Earth Church announced the end of the sacrificial ceremony, the solemn atmosphere gradually dissipated. Some people around the square also left to enjoy the rare wine and food today, but more people stayed and waited for the subsequent enthronement ceremony. This is also a topic of conversation for many civilians in Kangwon City. The family of a certain family is not doing well, and the new head of the family did not inherit the title. So and so is amazing, and was directly enthroned as a court viscount. Li Si also stood aside under the leadership of the waiter, waiting for the call of His Majesty the King. Looking at the people behind him, Li Si couldn't help laughing. It seems that he is the youngest in this enthronement ceremony, but he still stands at the front. The people behind him are also a little confused. After all, many of them are enthroned for the first time, so they naturally don't know Li Si. But they also know that the higher the title awarded in the enthronement ceremony, the first to appear. And this young man in front of him, so young, is he going to inherit the title of his ancestors? I haven't heard that the head of any noble family has passed away. Li Si naturally ignored the doubts of others. He did not value the title of Marquis that much. After all, he had chosen another extraordinary path that was more ambitious, broader, and more difficult. Li Si believed that this title of Marquis was just an embellishment for him. For example, Mr. Fran, as a legendary wizard, he could occupy a piece of land and establish himself as a king, but he was too lazy to accept the title of Duke of the Kingdom. Just when Li Si's thoughts were wandering, the voice of Duke Hard sounded. Silence. The enthronement ceremony begins. Please. The Viscount of the Palace, Li Si Kane. Chapter 177 Assassination. Hearing this, Li Si slowly walked out from the side. The warm morning sun shone down, and it seemed as if there was a faint halo on Li Si. His neat black short hair and handsome face surprised some of the nobles around him, and many female nobles showed a different kind of brilliance in their eyes. The legendary mage disciple who had been circulating among the nobles for a long time was indeed a handsome man. They had completely forgotten how they had laughed at Li Si, a stay-at-home noble, and naturally changed their attitude. This was also the way of survival for most of the small nobles. Li Si ignored the whispers of the nobles around him, walked to the steps in front of the king, waved his cloak with his right hand, knelt on one knee, and said respectfully, "Praise your greatness and wisdom, your majesty Morton." Morton looked at the young man in front of him with a smile on his face. "It's great to be young. I'm as handsome as I used to be, and I'm so capable. What a pity." Duke Hader didn't notice that the king was distracted and continued. The court Viscount Kane first cleared the lich secrets in the suburbs of the capital alone, and then assisted the kingdom to properly deal with the turmoil in the Church of All Beasts. His merits are remarkable. Under the witness of the God of Dawn, he is awarded the title of Court Marquis. Fuchs's steady voice reached the ears of many nobles present, and everyone was a little unbelievable. This, a new Marquis? The turmoil in the Church of All Beasts. Could it be that the god descended in the lower city a few days ago? It is estimated that Lis played a big role in it, otherwise the evil god's arrival would not have ended with only destroying one street. In that case, Lis is indeed worthy of the title of Marquis. However, Court Marquis, among the 5 titles of Duke, Marquis, Earl, Viscount, and Baron in the Kingdom of Fez, only dukes and marquesses can be called great nobles, and they are also the unattainable goals of most small nobles. I didn't expect Lis Kane to become a marquis at such a young age. However, remembering the news that had been circulating in the capital before, everyone present was relieved. It was indeed incomparable. Listening to the announcement of Ducard, Li Si, who had been informed of the process in advance, also stood up. The waiter beside him hurriedly stepped forward, took off the cloak that Li Si was wearing, and changed into a red and white robe representing the Marquis. Morton Feast also stood up from the throne, walked down the steps slowly, and stood in front of Li Si. He drew out the platinum sword decorated with gold and dazzling gems, and gently tapped the shoulder of Li Si, who was kneeling on one knee. Under the witness of the God of Dawn, Arcane, in the name of King Feast, I grant you the title of the Marquis of the Palace. May the light of dawn accompany you, and you will always be humble, upright, brave and fair. After accepting the title from King Morton, Liz respectfully replied, "Thank you for your fairness and generosity, and I offer you my loyalty, Your Majesty Morton." The title ceremony was supposed to end here, but King Morton smiled and gently bent down to help Liz up, which was a bit unusual. Everyone present could see that His Majesty the King valued and loved Arcane. Liz also saluted this majesty again and stepped aside. Wow, did you see that? Liz is now Marquis. Sure enough, he solved the incident of the Lord of all Beasts' descent. Mo Yun, who was standing at the edge of the square, shouted excitedly and pulled Claw along. Although Li Si is really handsome now, but let go. Claw felt the strange gazes of the people around him, and he, who has always been thin-skinned, wanted to turn around and run. I don't know this person. Watching the king continue to confer titles on other nobles, Li Si felt a little bored. Maybe it was a little novel, because it was the first time, but after experiencing it once, it felt that it was nothing special. It's better to feel a sense of gain when you upgrade to a higher level. Maybe this is the best thing that you don't get. However, you have obtained the title of the Marquis of the Court of the Kingdom of Fez. You have obtained a new milestone, Marquis of the Court. Your milestone, Viscount of the Court, has been replaced. Milestone, Marquis of the Court. National Legend plus 30. Initial favorability of some forces increased. Not bad. 30 points of National Legend added. Li Si nodded. The reward was okay, and I didn't expect that there was also an effect of increasing the initial favorability of some forces, which was much better than the effect of Viscount of the Court. However, the country legend is the lowest level of legend, which can be obtained by completing many tasks, and the value is also relatively high. In the same case, 1 point of continent legend is equal to 100 points of country legend. The rest is. Li Si looked at Jatan, who was standing beside the king with a smile on his face. From his expression, it was completely impossible to tell that he was actually secretly planning to assassinate the nobles present. However, after going through so many things, would the prince's target still be himself? Li Si expressed his curiosity. But no matter what the situation was, Li Si didn't care, because he had already used the big killer. As long as the gold level assassin dared to take action, Li Si would send him to see the god of death. The process of the enthronement ceremony was very fast. During this enthronement, there was also a gold warrior who chose to join the kingdom, and was awarded the title of court baron. It seems that there are many gold level warriors who choose to join the kingdom to obtain titles, but gold level professionals of other professions are rare. The enthronement ceremony ended quickly, and His Majesty King Morton returned to the throne, and sat down again. With Li Si's excellent eyesight, he clearly saw the fine beads of sweat on Morton's head. Sure enough, His Majesty the King is not in good health. No wonder the original speech was given to Jatan. Normally, after the enthronement ceremony, all that remains is for His Majesty Morton to light the torch of the sacrifice, and the entire sacrifice festival celebration is over. At this time, just as Beavis stepped forward and was about to command the Golden Lion Knights to guard His Majesty, something strange happened. In order to make way for the assembled knights, a waiter took a few steps closer to the area where the nobles were. In the sun, the waiter's shadow tilted and fell on the ground near the nobles. No one noticed that the waiter's shadow twisted slightly, and a shadow spread out from the waiter's shadow and slowly spread in the direction of the nobles. Li Si, who was standing not far away, seemed to have noticed something, and looked over with a frown. Before Li Si could determine the direction, He saw a thin figure suddenly rushing out from the shadow on the ground, holding a dagger flashing with cold light in his right hand, and in the blink of an eye he came to the crowd of nobles on the right side of the king. A cold light flashed by, and the 4 nobles did not feel any pain, but their vision was blurred. Their bodies began to feel cold, and a burning sensation spread from the neck downwards. Why is it dark? This was the last thought in the minds of these nobles. Stop. Beavis's angry voice rang in their ears, but unfortunately these people had already entered an eternal sleep. There is one more chapter. If you have extra monthly tickets, can you give me some? Chapter 178 is the one under your feet, the Golden Assassin? Stop. Beavis' voice rang out, and his body had already leaped up and rushed towards the black-clad assassin. However, Beavis did not lose his mind. He seemed to want to catch the assassin directly, but in fact he was heading towards the direction between the assassin and His Majesty the King. The death of a few nobles was a big deal, but compared with the safety of His Majesty the King, Beavis knew the difference very well. The people around him seemed to be awakened by Beavis's roar, especially the people around the nobles, whose throats were cut. The hot blood splashed on them, and they just reacted and fled around in fear. Screams continued to ring, and the scene was suddenly in chaos. Of course, not all the nobles were useless. Several nobles present burst out with a golden level aura and suddenly surrounded the black-clad assassin. Li Si's face was normal. This was something he had expected to happen a long time ago, but he noticed that 2 figures suddenly appeared in front of King Morton. It looked like they were also gold-level strongmen. Sure enough, His Majesty the King still had other protective forces around him. All of this happened in an instant. The black-clad assassin who killed 4 nobles instantly just glanced at Beavis, who was the fastest. He waved his sleeves, and the dagger in his hand spun handsomely. The whole person seemed to melt into the shadow on the ground and disappeared. The next moment, Beavis appeared at the position where the black-clad assassin was just now, with a gloomy face. Someone actually dared to assassinate a noble during the holy festival. This was a provocation to the Kingdom of Fez, and it gave the kingdom a slap in the face. Moreover, the assassin was allowed to leave smoothly. Beavis could no longer detect the assassin's breath. He was very sure that the gold-level assassin did not enter the stealth state, but directly used the shadow jump to leave here. The assassin's shadow jump is the only skill that can be compared to the mage's teleport, and each has its own strengths. Beavis looked at the 4 young nobles lying on the ground with black faces and shook his head. There is no hope. Not only did they cut their throats, but they should have used some special means. Beavis could no longer feel any breath of life. Priest, come quickly. Although he knew that there was little hope, Beavis still asked the priests of the Dawn Church and the Earth Church to come and treat him. Regardless of whether he could be saved or not, he had to show some respect. Then, Beavis no longer cared about the little nobles, and shouted at Odysseus, "Odysseus, what's going on with the magic circle? How can there be an assassin who can use shadow jump?" "Yes, that's right. Since His Majesty the King is present, the Royal Mage Corps must be present. They are responsible for the protective magic circle on the scene, and the host is the old acquaintance Odysseus. There is no way. The captain is too arrogant and can't be invited. The other deputy captain is not in the Bright Light City at this time, so all important matters of the Mage Corps in the near future are presided over by Deputy Captain Odysseus. Odysseus, the Destiny Worker, Bloomer is having a headache now. The cause of the protective magic circle and the forbidden teleportation magic circle on the Triumph Square are in his hands, but he just checked, and there is no problem with the magic circle. And even if the assassin uses shadow jump to leave in front of him, the magic circle will not react at all. This means that the assassin's shadow jump is of a very high rank, and it is not restricted by the magic array set up by the kingdom. How is this possible? This was set up by the entire Royal Mage group. Although Lord Flame of Judgment did not personally take action, he had also seen the magic array of these magic arrays and gave them an okay evaluation. Odysseus really couldn't figure out how the assassin broke through the restrictions and used shadow jump. Could he be a legendary assassin? The scene of the celebration was in chaos, but Morton Feast sat calmly on the throne, as if he was not worried about the assassin assassinating him. However, there was a hint of strangeness in his eyes, and he glanced at the second prince standing beside him. The second prince also looked calm, but this look was a little fake in Morton's eyes. As one of the leaders of the celebration, you are so calm, who are you pretending to be? Just when Morton was about to say something, a dark grey crack more than 10 meters long appeared in the sky. The crack slowly opened, revealing a world full of dark grey airflow and endless darkness behind it. Beavis and Odysseus recognized it at a glance. Behind this crack was the shadow plane. What? Could it be that the assassin had a backup plan? Beavis didn't have time to think, and his body subconsciously rushed to Morton. Together with several other guardians, he guarded the safety of His Majesty the King with a solemn face. Golden Lion Knights, everyone be alert. This abnormality also deeply stimulated the nobles around, and the crowd, that had just calmed down, began to get chaotic again. In addition to the soldiers who stood in place and took out their weapons and were on guard, the calmest person was the new court Marquis Kane. He pursed his lips, a little embarrassed. He didn't expect to make such a big noise, making everyone on the scene nervous again. When the dark grey crack in the sky slowly unfolded, it revealed a momentum that made the gold level masters present shudder. Is this a legend? Beavis's face became more cautious. This momentum was quite unfamiliar. It was not the 3 legends of Kangwang City, but it must be a legendary master. It should be a legendary assassin who is good at controlling the power of the shadow plane. Who on earth could command a legendary assassin? Just when everyone at the scene held their breath and tensed up, a black figure appeared in the crack in the sky. Beavis recognized it at a glance as the golden level assassin who had just assassinated several nobles and almost ordered everyone to go up. As a result, he saw the black-clad assassin falling straight down from the crack in the air like a puppet. Bang! The black-clad assassin fell straight to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. What was going on? Everyone's eyes were focused on the black-clad assassin who looked like a dead pig. This inexplicable development made them a little confused. Soon, everyone noticed Marquis Kane standing in front of the assassin. Looking at his calm expression, it seemed as if he had guessed something. Feeling that everyone's eyes were on him, Li Si chuckled, stepped on the black-clad assassin, and said with a confident smile, "I think there should be no danger now." Looking at the king sitting on the throne and the second Prince Yatan who could no longer hide his panic beside him, Li Si thought he would be more excited, but now he was unusually calm. Also, maybe we need to talk privately. The young Marquis was in high spirits, but he was stepping on the gold level assassin who had just been so arrogant and blatantly assassinated several nobles. This sharp contrast was deeply engraved in the minds of everyone present. It was as if announcing the arrival of a new era. Chapter 179 There is only one truth. Kangwang City, Fez Palace. In a gorgeously decorated reception room, the maids hurriedly prepared, placed hot black tea and exquisite desserts on the small table in the middle of the sofa, and left the room after a respectful salute. Duke Hader looked serious, so it was better to leave early. If he accidentally heard some incredible secrets, it would not be something that could be revealed with a little punishment. This is the way of life for a palace maid. Li Si leaned on the soft sofa, tasting the fragrant black tea. He has now adapted to this special bitter taste, which is just right with some sweet pastries. However, Duke Hader, who was sitting opposite Li Si, was a little restless. It was really that the situation of the sacrifice festival today was a little too unexpected. The celebration was going smoothly, but there was a gold level assassin who assassinated him, and it was successful. The gold level assassin who had already escaped was caught by a legendary assassin. Moreover, this legendary assassin seemed to have a very close relationship with Li Si Kane, who had just become a marquis. This series of super developments made Fuxisi a little overwhelmed. Fuxisi used to think that Li Si was just a relatively outstanding junior, and he still had some thoughts of taking care of him. But watching him grow up quickly step by step and become a disciple of Flame of Judgment, it is entirely possible that he will touch the realm of legend in the future. Looking at Li Si with a relaxed face, Fuxisi thought about it and did not ask. Let's wait until His Majesty the King comes. The silence between the two lasted for a while, before being broken by His Majesty the King and the second Prince Yatan who pushed the door. Morton Feace's face has returned to calm. For this monarch who has seen countless storms, even if the sky falls, he can't lose his composure. Not to mention The final result of the assassination on the Holy Festival today is not bad, and the assassin has been caught. Lisi. Morton sat on the sofa in the main seat, his face calm, no longer as relaxed and casual as when he first summoned Lisi. Lisi, with two legendary bosses standing behind him, is enough for Morton to pay attention to him, instead of simply treating him as a junior and a minister. I wonder who that strong man is? Morton sat on the sofa in the main seat and asked after a moment of silence. Jatten did not sit down, but chose to stand behind Morton. Lisi did not look around, like he did in the triumphal square before, but smiled and replied, "That is an elder of the family." Morton heard the news, nodded and smiled. In fact, when Beavis told him that a legendary assassin appeared, he had already guessed it in his heart. After all, Lisi had mentioned it to him implicitly before. Morton did not ask any more questions. Since Lisi had hinted before, he had no ill will towards the kingdom. That's good. Then Morton did not intend to ask any more questions, and he had to have a certain respect for the legendary strongman. Lisi, since you invited that person today, did you know in advance that something would happen today? Morton smiled on his old face and asked. To be honest, he had vaguely guessed who did it today, but the appearance of that person made Morton even more confused. Morton did not believe that a legendary assassin would always follow Lisi, and what happened today was definitely not a coincidence. Your Majesty should have guessed it, Lisi said with a smile. Logically, King Morton must have known what Jatten was secretly planning. Even if he didn't know that Jatten would assassinate the nobles at the Holy Festival, he should have reacted at the first time. Don't doubt the political sensitivity of a king. Why not let His Highness Jatten explain why this happened today? Lisi suggested, narrowing his eyes and looking at Jatten standing behind Morton. Jatten's heart sank when he heard this. In fact, when he saw the assassin Bloodblade being captured in the square, he already knew that his plan had been discovered and took countermeasures in advance. The person who discovered his plan was Lisi Kane, who had always made him uneasy. When Lisi said this, it meant that he didn't want to let him go. Morton's face did not show any ripples when he heard Lisi's meaningful words. Duke Hard has been watching his nose watching his mouth, and his mouth watching his heart. He sat upright and seemed to be unconcerned. Everyone present was smart. His Majesty asked him to stay, but that didn't mean he could talk freely now. Then Jatten, tell me, what's going on? Morton said in a calm tone, picking up the teacup and taking a sip of black tea. Jatten took a deep breath and didn't choose to defend himself. At this point, he naturally had the awareness of facing failure. Jatten walked in front of His Majesty the King, knelt on his knees, and said in a deep voice, the assassin was secretly trained by the Birdage Kingdom, but in fact he was a pawn I planted in the Birdage Kingdom many years ago. The assassination that took place at the celebration today was also secretly planned by me. Jatten gritted his teeth and explained his entire plan word by word, and he breathed a sigh of relief. It was as if the haze that had been accumulated in his heart for many days had finally been revealed. No matter what the final result was, he would face it calmly. Wow. Lisi, who was listening on the side, was amazed in his heart. He didn't expect Jatten's plan to be so rigorous and thoughtful. From the Birdage Kingdom to the border dukes and court nobles. From purchasing strategic materials everywhere to planning the assassination on the Holy Festival. Jatten's plan can be said to be linked together and far-reaching. Especially the assassin Bloodblade from the Birdage Kingdom turned out to be his man, which was simply amazing. It must be said that Jatten is indeed a capable and ambitious person who can coordinate and lay out such a large plan. Unfortunately, he met himself, not the nerdy Lisi Kane in his previous life. I remember that I was one of the nobles you planned to assassinate at the beginning, Lisi said with a smile, and exposed the place that Jatten concealed. Yes, but later I changed the candidate. Seeing that Lisi was so clear, Jatten also admitted it very openly, without even thinking about how Lisi knew every link of his plan so clearly. Morton also felt what Lisi expressed in his heart. Jatten wanted to target me, or even kill me, so I fought back. However, I still care about the face of the kingdom, so I did not point out that Jatten was the mastermind on the spot. But the kingdom should not think of letting Jatten off easily. as the prince of the kingdom, assassinating the nobles of the kingdom will cause turmoil in the kingdom. Smart people never need to say much. Now, this difficult problem is handed over to King Morton. Should Jatun be severely punished? Chapter 180 The cruel, but kind old king. Morton Feast closed his eyes. This choice was not difficult for him. As the lord who led the kingdom of Feast to rise, he might be a little soft-hearted towards his children, because of his age, but Morton would not hesitate too much when it comes to matters concerning the future of the kingdom. Jatun, my child. Morton said softly with his eyes closed. His body seemed to collapse, and his thin body was completely wrapped by the sofa. Father. Jatun raised his head. In his memory, his father had never spoken to him in such a gentle tone. He was always busy with state affairs. Under his leadership, the kingdom of Feast also became the leading human power on this continent. Therefore, even though Jatun had few opportunities to get close to Morton, since he was a child, he always set his goal to become a wise monarch like his father. He studied hard, since he was a child. He studied government affairs, military affairs, and people. As long as it was knowledge related to becoming a king and managing the country better, Jatun was studying hard. His efforts were praised by some people. Even now, ministers and nobles still regard him as the best heir to the kingdom, the next king of Fez. Jatun used to think so too. But one day, his expectations, or the goal he had been striving for, were shattered. Morton Fez, his father, brought a little girl to the palace. It was a very cute child. Jatun thought so when he saw Taya for the first time, and he didn't mind his father bringing his illegitimate daughter back to the palace. But everything changed soon afterwards. Taya began to show her terrifying talent, and her amazing progress amazed everyone. Even the legendary monk, Broken Mountain, Ivan Dean praised Taya's talent. She will be the first legendary warrior in the kingdom. After that, His Majesty the King immediately blocked all news about Taya. But how could all this be hidden from Jatun? Jatun, who had studied for many years and was mature, knew that if Taya really broke through and became a legendary warrior, there would be no other choice for the throne of the kingdom of Fez. Even if Jatun was excellent, it would be useless. Perhaps Jatun could become a respected duke and assist Taya in governing the country, but is that really what he wants? Therefore, Jatun chose to resist without hesitation. He wanted to make everything a foregone conclusion before Taya broke through and became a legend. Start a war, grab credit, and ascend the throne in advance. This is Jatun's plan and his ambition. Li Si shook his head. Even though he knew all this, he did not have any sympathy for Jatun. He was not a saint who would be kind enough to forgive someone who once wanted to murder him. Since he chose to kill the snake, he must be killed directly without giving him any chance to resist. I don't have many children. Now there are only you and little Taya left. In fact, I also vaguely noticed it before, and I roughly know what you are thinking. Taya, she is the future of the kingdom. Maybe I should have stopped you when I found out about your plan, instead of giving you a chance out of softness. Maybe this is a mockery of fate to me, Morton said with some emotion. Jatun did not respond at all, but listened quietly to his father's words. King Morton opened his eyes, not looking at Jatun who was kneeling in front of him, but turned to Li Si and said, Li Si, since you didn't let that person take action in advance, you should have noticed it. Li Si felt that King Morton, who was sitting on the sofa, seemed to be a little older at this time, and his energy was insufficient. Yes, I want to promote the war against the kingdom of Birditch. You finally chose this path. Yes, the kingdom has developed to this point today. I'm old and no longer have more energy to maintain the balance in the country. It is better to throw all these contradictions into a war. Morton shook his head and said a little tiredly. Li Si naturally understood what King Morton meant. The kingdom of Fez has flourished to this day, and the potential for internal development has been almost tapped. Before the new productivity revolution comes, domestic contradictions will only continue to accumulate. Border nobles hope to open up territories and expand their influence. Court nobles hope to start a war and seize military merits to become real nobles. Merchants hope that the kingdom's territory will be wider and no longer subject to the heavy taxes of those foolish small countries. Even the lowest civilians, under the secret encouragement, have a faint hope of crossing the class through war. under the influence of so many promoters. In fact, all the prerequisites for war have been met. After the Church of the Gods gave up mediating the conflicts and disputes between countries, stopped preventing the outbreak of war, and chose to stand idly by, the arrival of the war can no longer be stopped, which is why King Morton chose to acquiesce to Jatun's plan, and why Lisi asked Joyce to capture him after the successful assassination of the Bloodblade. Unfortunately, Morton Feast did not know that his choice would trigger a war and gunpowder that would affect the entire Fanal continent. Lisi sighed in his heart, but did not remind him. This is the prelude to the arrival of the tide of the times. The gods have chosen to give up. How can he, a small silver mage, stop the ignition of the war? Under the situation, that is enough to affect the kingdom and even the entire continent. The 4 nobles who died tragically seem so insignificant. The war is coming, but it cannot be promoted by Jatun. King Morton said with certainty. This is the most fundamental point. If outsiders knew that the second prince was the one who murdered the nobles, it would have an unimaginable impact on the situation in the kingdom. Lisi nodded. This was certain, so he did not point out that Jatun was the murderer on the spot. As for Jatun, Morton Feast looked at Jatun, who was kneeling in front of him with his head down, and his dry right hand couldn't help but tremble a few times. Lisi, I have a request. Lisi frowned. Could the old king be confused? He had said it so clearly, and he still wanted to let Jatun go? Morton waved his hand and said in a deep voice, Jatun has made a big mistake, so I will not forgive him just like that. If we depose, or even execute him now, it will be equivalent to letting outsiders know what happened directly. Since the war has begun, we must continue. When the war is over, I will announce that all this is Jatun's conspiracy and depose him from his princely status. During this period, I will put him under house arrest in the palace and will not let him continue to cause trouble. Lisi, you don't have to worry. I will ask His Excellency, Flame of Judgment, to set a ban on Jatun. If he still has bad intentions towards you, he will die directly. When the war is over, if you still insist on executing Jatun, I have no objection. After saying that, Morton stared at Lisi closely. Lisi did not feel a trace of His Majesty the King's momentum from the old man, but only the request of an elderly father. Moreover, to be honest, His Majesty the King's action was indeed a bit cruel, much more exaggerated than Lisi imagined. This was even more painful for Jatun than directly executing him. No hope for the throne. The blame for promoting the war was honestly put on him. House arrest for life. And also banned by the legendary wizard. Morton took almost all of Lisi's concerns into consideration, so Lisi naturally believed in his teacher's methods. Jatun is completely finished. Only one life is left to linger on. Then as you wish. I'm really sorry, Tingai caught a cold, coughing badly, and my mind is a little confused. I wrote and deleted, and it has been delayed until now, asterisk. Everyone should also pay attention to keeping warm. Don't catch a cold in cold weather. Chapter 181 Shares of the Kangwang United Chamber of Commerce. After Lisi agreed to the old king's request, the old king seemed to have finally put his mind at ease, leaning back on the sofa with some fatigue. Silently waving his hand, a figure appeared behind Morton. Lisi immediately recognized him as one of the 2 guards who suddenly showed up to protect Morton at the celebration. It should be one of the royal shadow guards. The shadow guard understood Morton's meaning, walked up and unceremoniously picked up the kneeling Jatun. Jatun remained silent, as if he was forcibly pulled up like a zombie, and his whole spirit seemed to have completely collapsed. But just as the shadow guard was about to take him out of the room, Jatun raised his head and looked at Lisi, who was sitting on the sofa. Lisi naturally noticed Jatun's actions, but strangely, there was no resentment or hatred in his eyes, but a sense of relief. After Morton told him about his punishment, Jatun didn't think much about it. It's done, no need to say more. No matter what the punishment was, Jatun could accept it. It was just the consequence of his previous decision. I'm sorry. When Artan passed by Lisi, Lisi heard the second prince's soft words. Lisi was surprised. He really didn't expect Artan to have this attitude. As for Artan's apology, Lisi didn't feel anything. If the apology was useful, could the 4 nobles who died in the hands of the Bloodblade be resurrected? Li Si will not forget that in the previous life game, he, Viscount Arcane, was bleeding on the spot, and even his soul was completely annihilated, with no possibility of resurrection. It was also because of Li Si's unremitting efforts in the past few months that he could smile at Artan's bleak end at this time. After Artan was taken away by the Shadow Guard, Morton Feast was also a little tired and waved to the servant to help him leave for a rest. But before leaving, Morton still glanced at Fuchsis, who had been sitting beside him. Fuchsis naturally understood, which was why Morton asked him to stay. After Morton left, the atmosphere in the room became much more relaxed. Fuchsis took a sip of the black tea and said, "This Saint Festival is really thanks to you, Li Si." The two of them tacitly did not mention anything about Jatan. "Lucky, this is also something I mentioned to you before." Li Si picked up a piece of dessert and said with a smile, "Old man, don't pretend that you didn't notice anything. After all, I had reminded Duke Hard through Yazan before. Haha, I'm old. I really didn't realize that there are so many twists and turns here." Fuchsis's expression did not change, indicating that this has nothing to do with me. Li Si smiled and said nothing. There is no point in pursuing this matter. It is better to see what compensation His Majesty Morton will make. Yes, after all, Li Si can agree to King Morton's request, and Morton will compensate from other places. This is also the reason why Fuchsis stayed. After all, Duke Hard can make the decision on most things. This is also your credit. That lord should be communicating with Lord Ivan at this time. Li Si has made great contributions today. What reward do you want? Fuchsis's words were very direct. Since Li Si had a legendary elder behind him, the existence of the legendary monk in the palace naturally did not need to be concealed from Li Si. Or it could not be concealed. A legendary assassin appeared in Kangwang City. As a legendary strongman of the royal family, Ivan Dean naturally had to come forward to find out Joyce's background. Li Si also knew that Joyce had secretly told him about this before coming here. But then again, this legendary monk is really loyal to the kingdom of Feast. Isn't he worthy of being a legendary strongman cultivated by the royal family since childhood? But this is not necessarily a good thing for Ivan. The royal family of Feast said the existence of Ivan Dean, of course, as a trump card, but this also restricted him to the palace. This also made Ivan Dean not make much progress in breaking through to become a legendary strongman. The strength of this legendary monk can only be regarded as ordinary among the legendary strongmen. Although Joyce is in a similar situation to Ivan and has lived in Kangwang City for a long time, Joyce has a special skill: Shadow Incarnation. As a legendary shadow dancer, Joyce has a very close connection with the shadow plane. He can use the power of the shadow plane to form an incarnation. This incarnation is different from the ordinary clone skills, because most of Joyce's abilities are concentrated on using the power of the shadow plane, so this shadow incarnation can also do the same thing as Joyce himself. Therefore, this shadow incarnation can have 70% to 80% of Joyce's own strength, and the destruction of the incarnation has no effect on Joyce himself, and it can be condensed again at any time. Joyce can usually focus his mind on the shadow incarnation for adventure and training, so the speed of Joyce's strength improvement has not fallen behind at all. Now his strength is even stronger than Ivan, who has already become a legend. This special skill is also the reason why Fran is quite envious. When Joyce was teaching Li Si before, he gave Li Si all the precautions for this skill. However, it may be that the rank requirement of this skill is very high, or Li Si's affinity with the shadow plane is not enough, so he did not learn it. Of course, anything is fine. I dare not ask for anything. Li Si smiled and kicked the ball back to Fuzisi. To be honest, Li Si really didn't think about what he needed. Li Si had been to the palace treasury before. Except for the trial card. Last time, there were no treasures that could attract Li Si. Gold coins and property were meaningless to him. It would be better to see what good things the kingdom can come up with. Fuzis's face did not change, and he smiled and said, "After all, Li Si, your title has just been promoted. It's a bit early to want to improve it again. Others, I wonder if you are interested in the Kangwang United Chamber of Commerce, HMM." When this was mentioned, Li Si became a little spirited. After all, the Kangwang United Chamber of Commerce, as the second largest chamber of commerce in the Kingdom of Fis, is a considerable foundation. Fuzisi saw that Li Si was interested, and he felt relieved. The Kangwang United Chamber of Commerce nominally belongs to the court nobility, but in fact it is still under the control of the royal family, but all profits will be distributed according to shares. Li Si, since you are already a court marquis, and have made such a great contribution, you should also have a share of the Kangwang United Chamber of Commerce. Of course, if you work hard, it is not impossible for you to get shares in the Fisi Chamber of Commerce. Li Si smiled, and did not pay attention to the hint in Fuchs's words. After friendly negotiations, 10% of the shares of the Kangwang United Chamber of Commerce went into Li Si's pocket. Chapter 182, Divine Revelation Weekly. With the end of the Kangwang City Sacrifice Festival, the game Shenqi has officially entered the 1.0 version, the smell of war. At the same time, as the Shenqi game gradually advances, the popularity is steadily increasing, and more people are gradually getting to know this epoch-making new game. Shenqi Game Company will naturally strike, while the iron is hot, firmly grasp this hot spot, and expand the influence of the Shenqi game as much as possible. Shenqi Weekly. As an official organization's information column, the content is mainly game information that various players in the Shenqi game are interested in, such as official notifications, player anecdotes, game strategies, and professional competition progress. It can only be said that the official also understands what the players need. Every time the Shenqi Weekly is interesting, and a little bit of sand sculpture, it is quite popular among players in later generations. Li Si also saw this new column while lying on the bed and browsing the forum the day after the sacrifice festival. I have to say that I still miss it quite a lot. In my previous life, Li Si was also very careful to collect information from all aspects of the game. Naturally, he never missed a single issue of Shenqi Weekly. After all, as a power leveling master, Li Si must always pay attention to the progress of the game, so that he can make small money more efficiently. Looking at the familiar beautiful host in Shenqi Weekly, if it weren't for the system restrictions that prevented him from sending messages, Li Si would have wanted to post messages like urge for more updates and silly Sakura right now. The first issue of Shenqi Weekly roughly reviewed the dynamics of the various continents in the Shenqi game. In Shenqi, according to the situation of the Jaya world, the 6 continents correspond to different game servers. The early main quests of each game server are independent of each other. When the 3.0 version, Other World Development, comes, the main quests of all servers will begin to be unified. For example, in the Fanal continent where Huaxia is located, the main quest of version 1.0 is The Smell of War, and the main quest of version 2.0 is Total War. The main reason is that the Kingdom of Fis first started a war against the Kingdom of Bertich, breaking the peace for many years. While condemning the Kingdom of Fis, many human kingdoms found that the Church of the Gods did not take any substantial action, and their secret worries gradually subsided. Especially when seeing the Kingdom of Fis successfully defeat and annex the Kingdom of Bertich, greatly increasing the strength of the kingdom, those powerful countries could no longer hold back and attack the neighboring weak and small countries. This is also the beginning of the main quest of version 2.0. At the same time, major events that affected the entire region also occurred on other continents. For example, the Orc Blood War on the Ethan continent, such as the resurrection of the Sea of Dead Souls on the Ketan continent. The simultaneous appearance of these chaotic wars also confirmed the arrival of a new era. Divine Revelation Weekly naturally pays attention to major events in the game, especially the Kangwang City. First, there was the big event of the evil gods coming in the blood sacrifice turmoil, and then in the subsequent holy sacrifice festival, a gold level assassin attacked and killed nobles, which was much more exciting than the prologues in other places. So after roughly sorting out the game information, the female host naturally focused on the events in Kangwang City. Dear players, the above are 2 major events that have occurred in the Kangwang City of the Kingdom of Fez recently. The power of the gods really looks terrifying. This is the first time that a battle between gods and legends has appeared in the game. Annoying. I can't help but wonder, with so many things happening in Kangwang City, does it mean that in the main quests later, the Kingdom of Fez and Kangwang City will be one of the focuses? Of course, there is also a very mysterious and special character among them, Arcane. Friends who follow the forum know that Arcane is a character who has appeared in front of players very early. As a noble of the Kingdom of Fez, the White Dove Chamber of Commerce he founded is known as the most friendly force to players. At the same time, he has close relations with the Blood Sacrifice Riot and the Sacrifice Festival assassination case, and can even be said to be the protagonist in them. So what role will he play in the subsequent plot? How will the main plot of the Fana continent develop? Then please welcome our special guest today, the captain of the Kunlun team, Han Crossing. Han Crossing's face, which is very familiar to all players, appeared next to the female host. He is still quite well known among the players. There's no way around it. He's good at playing games and he's pretty handsome. Of course, the most important thing is that Han Crossing has won the world championship in previous games, so naturally he has a pretty big fan base. Welcome Han Crossing, come and say hello to everyone. Hello everyone, I'm Han Crossing, a player of the Kunlun team. Haha, Han Crossing looks pretty good. As far as I know, Han Crossing and most of the professional players of the Kunlun team were born in Kangwang City. I wonder if you have experienced the two major events I just mentioned? Han Crossing shook his head and said with some regret, really not. We went to the mercenary guild to accept the task as soon as possible. When we knew there was a White Dove Chamber of Commerce, it was already a little late, and we didn't receive the silver level task. I was present during the sacrifice festival, but I left after completing the task. I didn't expect the assassination to happen after I left. It's a pity that I didn't witness it with my own eyes. The female host Zioing pretended to be regretful and asked, that's really a pity. I wonder what Han Crossing thinks of the game character Lee Si. From the current information, Lee Si Kane should play a very important role in the later game plot. I even think he will be one of the protagonists of the plot. After all, this NPC's talent seems quite terrifying, and he is also the first high-level NPC willing to contact players so far. So will the Kunlun team try to contact this character later? Haha, it seems that I accidentally let it slip. I hope the legendary boss won't beat me up. It seems that the relationship between the two has always been very good. In fact, Zioing, I have always been very curious about it, and I think many players and viewers are also very curious. It is said that the president of Legend Yishi is also very good in gaming skills. He also assumed the position of coach of the Kunlun team. I wonder how the two of you know each other? In fact, when I was playing Genshin before, I met the legendary boss. That time he beat me badly, but now, I can control him with one hand. Later, that game had a professional competition, and the legendary boss asked me to form a team together. I realized that the legendary boss was actually a big boss, and then we came to this day step by step. So that's how it is. I didn't expect that the Kunlun team, one of the 4 major teams in China, came like this. Thank you, Mr. Han Crossing, for sharing. Our show today ends here. Everyone, please reward me with a one-click triple combo because I, Zioing, have worked so hard to invite Mr. Hanksing. I feel a little better today, but my mind is still a mess. Please forgive me. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183, The Beginning of War. Unconsciously, I seem to have really changed a lot of things. Before the assassination on the Holy Festival, there was no special feeling, but as the past few days passed, Lee Si also really felt the change. On the second day of the assassination on the Holy Festival, Duke Ram and Duke Bynum on the border had led their troops to attack the border city between the Kingdom of Bertich and the Kingdom of Fez. This move caused a great sensation both at home and in other countries, and all countries focused their attention on the war between the Kingdom of Fez and the Kingdom of Bertich. When this news reached Kangwang City, it also attracted everyone's attention. because the kingdom had announced at this time that the assassin sent by the kingdom of Bertich during the holy festival celebration aroused everyone's anger. In particular, the dispatch of troops by the two dukes on the border was regarded as the kingdom's determination to teach those despicable and treacherous people in the kingdom of Bertich a lesson. The court nobles were also very excited, and they offered suggestions and hoped that the kingdom would officially start the war. The merchants were the same, especially the prices of related commodities such as food and weapons began to fluctuate greatly. All this seemed to be no different from the previous life. But Li Si knew that the second prince, Jatan, who should have investigated the truth of the assassination and declared war on the Bertich kingdom in the palace, was now under house arrest in the depths of the palace. At this time, Li Si Kane, whose life should not be saved even by the advanced resurrection technique, stood here well and became the new Marquis of the kingdom. Things are unpredictable, but in the future, it will belong to my future. Li Si stood on one side of the ballroom, shaking a slender goblet with a small amount of bright red wine in his hand, squinting his eyes. Today is the third day after the end of the sacrifice festival. Li Si held a noble party in the Kane family mansion to celebrate his promotion to Marquis. This party is also held by every Fez noble after the promotion of the title. Duke had also considered that Li Si might have never experienced these things, so he specially asked Yazan to come and help Li Si with the preparations for the party. After all, the two previous heads of the Kane family rarely participated in the communication between the nobles of Kangwang City in order to reduce their presence as much as possible. Li Si's previous life was even more exaggerated. He turned into an autistic child and spent years wandering between home and academy. He was not interested in noble parties. However, Li Si no longer needs to be so low-key. Perhaps when Li Si was just reborn, he would still have doubts about the future, but now it is different. Becoming a disciple of Flame of Judgment and receiving Joyce's teachings can be said to have greatly broadened Li Si's horizons. Although Li Si had set breaking through to become a legend as his goal before, this was just a hope. Although Li Si's previous life had a lot of game experience, he not only knew all kinds of strategies for game players, but also those adventures and treasures that had not yet appeared in the world. But this was just an understanding. The most important thing was that Li Si did not have any information and methods to break through to become a legend. After all, no one in the previous life could break through to become a legend, and this naturally included Li Si. However, through the teachings of Flame of Judgment and Hidden Shadow, Joyce made up for his last deficiency. Hidden Shadow is the name left by Joyce's incarnation when he was out there. He was given this title because he rarely communicated with others and was a legendary shadow dancer who was best at the power of the shadow plane. Li Si, who was thinking about this, was talking to the nobles who gathered around him. Li Si, who was giving the opening speech for the first time, danced the first 3 rounds of dance with 3 beautiful ladies before the party officially entered its climax. Before he could rest for a while, Li Si was surrounded by many invited guests, and Yazan was also doing his best to introduce Li Si. After all, with Li Si's current status, he no longer needed to take the initiative to make friends with anyone, but many nobles took the initiative to make friends with this new noble in Kangwang City. Even the 4 court dukes of Kangwang City, except Duke Hard who did not attend and ought not to steal Li Si's limelight, all appeared in the party today. I didn't expect our newcomer Marquis Kane to be such an outstanding young man. Baldwin House, the current Duke of House, said with a smile. As a founding hero, when the Kingdom of Fez was established, the then head of the house family gave up the actual fiefdom prepared in the kingdom and suggested that the king follow the system of court nobles. This was a rather surprising move at the time, but it also proved the foresight of the first Duke of House. The house family also became the only descendant of the founding hero who has been passed down. No, it's all the teaching and care of His Majesty the King and the teacher. Li Si raised his glass and said with a smile. The decent etiquette and implicit self-confidence made the noble ladies who were observing this place not far away couldn't help but look around. Is Mr. Mora a good friend of Mr. Li Si? Nelson Barton, the current Duke of Barton, asked Li Si with a red wine glass. Li Si took a look, smiled and nodded and said, we have been playmates since childhood. Recently, we have set up a White Dove Guild together and are preparing to make some new magic products. Please take care of them when the time comes. Yes, just yesterday, the latest product of the self-charging magic pattern, the magic air conditioner, was finally developed. After adjustment by Master Deha, the current magic air conditioner is an all-round improvement over the products developed by players in the previous life. The temperature regulation effect, magic power consumption, and durability are all greatly improved. The only disadvantage is that it is difficult to burn the magic pattern. At present, at least an intermediate magic pattern master is required to successfully burn it. However, Lee Si doesn't care too much. This difficulty is much better than the leakage of the self-charging magic pattern. Duke House, Duke Barton, and Duke Russell, who had not spoken just now, smiled at each other and naturally understood what Lee Si meant. This is also the reason why several dukes gathered here. Facing a rising noble star, as old nobles, they are naturally willing to take the initiative, to make friends instead of excluding and suppressing. Everyone is a court noble, and they should be more warm together. For the shares of the Kangwang United Chamber of Commerce, they go to target the disciple of a legendary wizard. This is a real loss-making business, and these old foxes will definitely not do it. Therefore, in their view, Lee Si's words seem to be too direct, but instead he is showing goodwill to them. It was just a few fez coins, which no noble would lack. But that was how the relationship between nobles worked, and all relationships were built on these little bits of intertwining interests. Chapter 184 The Future of the White Dove Chamber of Commerce. Of course, Lee Si only briefly mentioned the White Dove Chamber of Commerce, and then he and the three dukes talked about other interesting things in Kangwang City with a smile. Everyone is smart, and if these things are mentioned, they will understand each other. This is not a riddle, or a suspense. This is also one of the ways for the nobles of the kingdom's elite level to select friends. If one party does not understand the meaning at all, perhaps the other party will reconsider the relationship and degree of cooperation between the two parties. After all, pig teammates are a disaster in any world. Lee Si did not like this kind of occasion and communication before. When he attended the party at Carol's house before, he chose to stay alone and watch the nobles socializing on the dance floor. Lee Si did not believe that a simple encounter and conversation could decide anything. More importantly, it depends on personal strength and power. It would be better to be like this now. Lee Si completely grasps the initiative of the party and becomes the core focus of everyone in this party. Even the three dukes choose to interact on an equal footing. Isn't this better than wasting time to curry favor with the powerful? Of course. Even so, after the novelty of the first time faded, Lee Si couldn't help feeling a little bored. With this time, it's better to study the cute little magic element. However, Lee Si still patiently greeted the greetings of other guests. In addition to announcing the arrival of Marquis Kane, the party Lee Si prepared tonight was also to open up the market for the civilian enchantment products of the White Dove Chamber of Commerce. Lee Si saw clearly that Mora on the other side was talking among the young nobles, as if he was promoting something. Mora's eloquence seemed to be quite good, and the young people around him showed a curious light in their eyes. This is what Lee Si asked Mora to do before. Lee Si knew very well that as a new thing, it was not easy for the general public to accept it. The best way is to take the upper route first. In other words, let the nobles of Kangwang City and even the Kingdom of Feast try to contact the new thing of magic air conditioning first, and gradually promote it as a new trend to the lower classes through publicity. After all, even if Lee Si moderately exaggerated the cost and raised the price of the magic air conditioner, it was enough for the middle class in Kangwang City to afford it. Think about it, if those nobles all started using the magic air conditioner of the White Dove Chamber of Commerce, would those who like to call themselves upper class or eager to join the aristocracy remain indifferent? This is the mentality that Lee Si wants to grasp. Now he is paving the way for the future of the White Dove Chamber of Commerce, in the name of Marquis Kane. As for whether the lower class people can afford it, no, at least not now. Lee Si has not thought about completely pushing forward the self-charging magic pattern products now. The White Dove Chamber of Commerce is just a toddler now, and now it wants to go to heaven? It's too early. Lee Si feels that, if Mora doesn't work hard and sees this opportunity, it will be a waste of his hard work. Halfway through the party, the people surrounding Lee Si finally began to disperse and began to communicate with each other. Lisi was also able to breathe a sigh of relief, holding a glass of golden champagne, and walked to the balcony on the second floor of the mansion, to rest for a while. The October evening breeze was already a little chilly, but it was just right for Lisi. He loosened the tight collar of his fancy clothes, and enjoyed a moment of leisure. "Thank you for your hard work today." A familiar voice came. Mora really looked thoughtful today. The black evening dress matched with simple short hair gave people a rare sense of competence. He has been obsessed with the work of the Chamber of Commerce recently, but his face has improved a lot. Staying away from women makes people progress. You too. Lisi leaned on the carved railing of the balcony and said with a smile, "But it seems that you are enjoying it. After all, it's a rare opportunity. This is all thanks to our president, Lord Lisi, the Marquis of Arcane. Don't give me that. If you really appreciate it, just pay more attention to the Chamber of Commerce." Lisi picked up the wine glass and gently clinked it with Mora, and they drank the mellow golden champagne together. Putting the empty wine glass on the railing, Lisi smiled and said, "It seems that your elder brother is a little anxious. He even came to me to discuss cooperation just now. He is smart, but his vision is too low." Mora said indifferently, but Lisi could see the inexplicable look in his eyes clearly. "So I'm very curious, your father, Baron Carroll, is obviously a very powerful person. Why does he think so much of your elder brother?" Mora also leaned beside Lisi, raised his head, and looked at the starry night sky, and said, "Who knows? No one knows what father is thinking. Let's not talk about me. What about you?" "Me?" Lisi asked curiously. "I always feel that you have changed a lot, as if you have suddenly become a different person." If it was Lisi who had just come to this world, he might still be a little panicked, but Lisi, who already had an anchor point and broke through the death ending of his previous life, no longer cared about these things, and asked back, "Aren't you the same?" "Haha, that's right. If I hadn't thought before that I would work so hard to do something. Should I congratulate you on finally growing up?" "Haha." Lisi laughed unceremoniously. "Go to hell." Mora also laughed and scolded. "Are you going to leave Kangwang City?" After a moment of silence, Mora suddenly asked. "Huh?" Lisi turned his head and looked at Mora. How could this guy suddenly feel so sharp? "There is indeed this plan. How did you guess it?" Lisi asked with some curiosity. He was indeed preparing to leave Kangwang City. After all, after the assassination case of the Holy Festival and the blood sacrifice turmoil, there were no major events in Kangwang City. After all, it is only version 1.0 now, and the progress of the game plot is not fast. Players need a certain amount of time to adapt to this world. But Lisi couldn't wait any longer. He knew what kind of chaotic world he would face in the future, and he needed to do everything possible to improve his strength. Therefore, Lisi needed to leave the comfort zone of Kangwang City to challenge himself, and at the same time, to find the treasures hidden in his memory in advance. "Because you seem to be a little anxious these days." Mora grinned and said, "It's like you want to hand the future of the White Dove Chamber of Commerce to me. Well, after all, I feel most at ease when I hand it over to you." Lisi raised his hand and reached into the night sky as if he was trying to grab something. "Compared to staying in Kangwang City, I need to exercise and want to gain stronger strength." Mora nodded. "I believe you can do it. Leave the White Dove Chamber of Commerce to me. I won't let you down." "Or, you have paved all the way. If I mess it up, wouldn't it make me look useless? Just do your best." Lisi shook his head and didn't care much. "By the way, it seems that you have gained a lot today." Lisi smiled and pointed to the pink handkerchief sticking out of Mora's shirt pocket. "This is the habit of the noble girls of Fez. If they meet a man they like, they will give him the handkerchief they carry with them. This later also implies a willingness to have a deeper communication." Mora's face turned dull, but he still shook his head. "It's not for me. It's boring. I didn't expect our playboy to be so particular." Lisi said with a smile, but he also felt Mora's determination to be abstinent for his career. Mora turned her head and was about to refute, but suddenly a hint of surprise appeared in her eyes. She nudged Lisi with her arm and said, "You are talking about me, but this one is definitely for you." The fever is gone, and I started coughing. My chest hurts from coughing. I hope it's pneumonia. Chapter 185. The girl's little surprise. Hearing Mora's words, Lisi turned his head subconsciously. I saw a young girl slowly walking towards the two of them. The snow white evening dress perfectly outlined the girl's graceful figure. The back of the dress fell slightly on the ground. The white lace skirt in front just reached the upper side of the girl's knees. The white stockings wrapped around the girl's slender and long legs, light and graceful. A simple red rope was dotted on the girl's soft and slightly exposed thighs. A few bright roses were dotted on the girl's chest, setting off the girl's fair skin. The fiery color of the red roses was not as good as the blush on the girl's face. The girl's stunning face seemed not very good at dealing with such scenes. Her face was a little ruddy, but her bright red eyes and long white hair gave her a mysterious temptation, which made people want to find out. It was Lisa. Lisi looked at Lisa, who stopped and stood not far away, in amazement. He had long felt that Lisa's usual clothes were too ordinary. She wrapped herself tightly and suggested several times without any change. I didn't expect to see Lisa in an evening dress tonight. I want to spend a fortune on this skin. Lisi didn't say much and immediately went to meet him. Mora, who was standing by, wanted to tease Lisi, but was stunned when she saw Lisi like this. He had never seen Lisi look like this to any beauty before. Oh. The red-haired beauty at the last palace party doesn't count. Good guy. I thought Lisi was not interested in women like Bernie, but it turns out that you are not interested in those rouge and powder. Although she thought so in her heart, Mora didn't say anything to disturb the two of them. Instead, she quietly left with a smile like an old father. Lisa was relieved when she saw the person next to Lisi leave. She was always afraid of people, but she mustered up the courage to wear this evening dress today. She could only wait quietly until Lisi came out to rest before she made up her mind to come over. Lisa also knew the person just now. He had been to the mansion several times before, but her shyness made Lisa stand not far away and didn't dare to come over. Finding that Lisi was walking towards her, Lisa suddenly felt like running away for some reason. Her chest was pounding and she didn't know what she was worried about. Will Master Lisi like me like this? Lisa couldn't help but raise her right hand to cover her eyes, not daring to look at Lisi again. Feeling the broad palm taking her little hand away from her, Lisa felt that the body temperature on Lisi's hand seemed to penetrate her white silk gloves. Lisi held Lisa's little hand tightly and took her from the corridor to the small balcony just now. Just now, Mora seemed to have invited everyone nearby to leave when she left. At this time, Lisi and Lisa on the balcony could only hear the night wind and the faint music of the party and each other's breathing. Lisa, who was led by Lisi like a wooden man, only reacted at this time and struggled slightly. Seeing that Lisi did not let go, she obediently let Lisi knead her little hand. But the blush on Lisa's face became brighter. Even through the gloves, Lisi could feel the tenderness of Lisa's little hands, as if years of study and training had not left any traces on her body. Lisa, why are you dressed so beautifully today? Lisi lowered his head and looked at the girl leaning against him and asked softly. Lisa did not answer directly, but asked in a low voice, does Master Lisi like it? Of course I like it. Lisi pinched Lisa's little hand and pulled her to lean on the balcony railing. Or, if you wear this to others, Lisa, I might be jealous. Lisa raised her head and stared at Lisi. Her blood-red eyes revealed an inexplicable look and said seriously, I will only wear it for Master Lisi in the future. Lisi also smiled and looked down at the serious Lisa. Her small figure could just rest her head on Lisi's shoulder. I couldn't help but stretch out my hand and rub Lisa's jade-like hair, which felt really good. You haven't told me yet, why did you suddenly give me this surprise today? Last time I took you to the party, you didn't want to? Lisa leaned towards Lisi and whispered, Lord Joyce asked me to prepare it, and the clothes are also a bit too revealing. Lisi lowered his head to admire it and said affirmatively, absolutely not, it just suits you, Lisa. But Lisi just realized that Joyce asked her to do the big change in Lisa today. What does this big guy want to do? I don't understand it or not. In fact, Joyce has no other thoughts. In his opinion, since Lisi is talented enough to inherit the inheritance of the Kane family, Lisa's existence is actually not that important. However, Lisa was taken in as a disciple by the old man Fran in a hurry. As for considering his personal connections, that's all bullshit. That posture is clearly the rhythm of snatching people. Since Lisa is very talented and little Lisey's talent is even more exaggerated, to be honest, Joyce is no longer too worried about their future. As long as Lisey reaches the gold level, he can hand over the inheritance of the Kane family to him. However, as an elder, Joyce considered more. Since there was no need to worry about the future of little Lisey, the inheritance of the Kane family in another sense could be put on the agenda. As for the object, Lisa was so talented and looked so good, she was simply the best choice. However, Joyce did not have the idea of forcing a decision. After all, the relationship was a matter of letting the two young people get along with each other, and he just pushed it. Lisey naturally didn't know so much, but now he couldn't think about other things. The elegant fragrance of the girl gradually lingered on the tip of Lisey's nose, which made him intoxicated. Let go of Lisa's little hand, and in the girl's somewhat puzzled eyes, he reached out and hugged the girl's white shoulders and held her in his arms. So, Lisa, are you willing to wear it for me? Lisey slowly approached the girl's face, staring at Lisa's rosy cheeks and said, "Of course I'm willing." Lisa leaned tightly in Lisey's arms, feeling her body was very hot and dizzy. But this feeling is not bad. Lisa gently leaned her head on Lisey's shoulder. At this moment, she didn't want to think about other things. In the girl's heart, she only wanted the time at this moment to be longer. Lisey lowered his head and slowly approached Lisa's stunning face. Lisa also noticed Lisey's actions, but she was a little lazy like a white lamb and didn't realize the danger was approaching. Lisey couldn't help it anymore, hugged the girl tightly in his arms, and gently kissed Lisa's soft and moist red lips. Lisa seemed to have just woken up. Her body stiffened suddenly, and her little hands clenched tightly. But soon, Lisa gradually immersed herself in the gentle line under Lisey's invasion, and her little hands relaxed, quietly leaning on Lisey's broad shoulders. The moonlight tonight is so beautiful. Chapter 186 Future Plans. The next day, at the Kane family mansion, Lisey climbed up from the soft bed and stretched lazily. The party last night ended at midnight, and Lisey stayed in the banquet hall until the end. There was no way. In Kangwang City, the longer the guests invited to the party stayed, the more they valued the host. If Yazan hadn't brought a group of servants from his home, Lisey really wouldn't have been able to make this party so successful. However, for Lisey, the greater gain yesterday was not the connections made at the party, or the promotion of the products of the White Dove Chamber of Commerce. On the contrary, the little surprise brought by Lisa made Lisey happier. It's a pity that the girl was still a little too shy. After kissing for a while, the little white rabbit jumped out of Lisey's arms as soon as she woke up and ran away in high heels. Well, Lisey didn't regret it. I just don't know how long it will take for Lisa to recover this time, and I have to coax her more. After all, this might be a little too exciting for the little girl. Shaking his head and not thinking about it anymore, Lisey finished washing up and went downstairs to enjoy today's breakfast. Today's breakfast is kangaroo toast, vegetable salad and a plesauce muffins. A light diet is just right for Lisey's appetite now. After all, he didn't eat much food last night, but he drank a lot of wine. Fortunately, Lisey is in good physical condition now, otherwise he might not be able to withstand the rounds of guests. After all, awakening technique can only ensure that Lisey's spirit is temporarily awake, but the alcohol in the body cannot be solved. After breakfast, Lisey deliberately brought a breakfast and went to the library to bring it to Lisa. When he opened the door, Lisa was lying on the bed with a quilt covering her head and pretending to sleep. Lisey smiled, put the breakfast on the table beside him, and said softly, "Remember to eat early, don't let it get cold." After that, Lisey gently closed the door and left. When she heard Lisey's footsteps, Lisa on the bed suddenly opened the quilt, walked to the table with her light body, and began to enjoy the breakfast brought by Lisey with a slightly red face. "You said you were going to leave Kangwang City to experience the world outside?" Joyce, who was sitting on the sofa, frowned slightly and looked at Lisey in front of him. Lisey nodded. Leaving Kangwang City was indeed something he had planned a long time ago. After returning from the library, he came directly to his boss to make a bottom line. "Yes, at this stage, I have learned everything I should learn from you and Teacher Stevens. It's time to go out and exercise my abilities." I have never left Kangwang City far. Joyce looked at Lee Si's mature face and seemed to see him and Brandon in the past. He shook his head and said with a smile, that's true. You really need to go out for training. Staying in Kangwang City all the time is really not good for your development. But, do you have any plans? Lee Si said seriously, I plan to go out alone as a mercenary. The first destination is the Luoxu Mountains in the north of the kingdom. Luoxu Mountains? Joyce nodded. He was very familiar with this place. The Luoxu Mountains spread across the northern border of the Kingdom of Feast. It is one of the few places in the kingdom with snow all year round. Because of this, many habits and characteristics of the magic beasts in the Luoxu Mountains are somewhat similar to those of the magic beasts in the northern wasteland of Fanal Continent. However, the strongest magic beasts in the Luoxu Mountains are only gold level existences. There is not much danger for Lee Si with the Shadow Amulet, and the strength of the magic beasts is just right for Lee Si to train. Without going into the details of why Lee Si chose the Luoxu Mountains as the training destination, Joyce continued to ask, are you going alone? I thought you would go with your adventure team members or Lisa? Lee Si understood what Joyce meant, but he had his own plans this time, and did not intend to bring anyone else. Jia and the others can't leave Kangwang City for too long. The kingdom will not be at ease. Lee Si shook his head and said, Joyce should have discovered that Taya was special. As for Lisa, Teacher Stevens told me that her talent is enough for her to break through to the legendary level without any bottleneck, so let her stay in Kangwang City. It's safer here. It seems that you have considered it very carefully. When are you going to leave? Joyce asked with a smile, as if watching a younger generation about to embark on a new journey. This week, after everything is arranged. Lee Si thought for a while and replied, then scratched his hair and asked, Uncle Joyce, will you stay in Kangwang City? Joyce took a sip of black tea, shook his head and said, I have a shadow incarnation outside. I don't care. I should stay in Kangwang City. However, Fran has a magic prop that can communicate over long distances. You can ask him for one, and you can contact me directly. I understand. Lee Si nodded and said, it seems that the teacher still has a lot of good things. Before leaving Kangwang City this time, I must ask carefully to see if I can get some good things. But if Joyce still plans to stay in Kangwang City, Lee Si will feel at ease. After I leave, if Mora and others encounter any difficulties that they are unable to resist, they can ask Joyce for help. Joyce glanced at Lee Si and naturally guessed his thoughts. But it's not a big deal. After the last holy festival, the legendary monk Alvin of the royal family specifically talked to him. After all, Ivan also witnessed the scene where Joyce gave the final blow to the incarnation of the Lord of all Beasts and understood that the strength of this legendary assassin might be even higher than his own, so his attitude was quite polite. Joyce had no idea about the Kingdom of Feast, and Lee Si had a close relationship with the kingdom, so he agreed to the cooperation proposed by Ivan. Without affecting Joyce's own interests, the kingdom can pay a price to ask Joyce to take action. Of course, there is no intention of forcing, and Joyce can completely refuse the request of the kingdom. Joyce can stay in Kangwang City for a long time. But at the same time, Joyce must ensure that he will not take action against the members of the royal family of Feast without reason. In order to make Joyce agree to this, if Joyce himself needs anything in Kangwang City, he can arrange for palace officials to deal with it. It can be said that the sincerity of the Kingdom of Feast is quite great. But it is true that for a country, the threat of legendary assassins is far greater than that of other legendary professionals, so almost no one will take the initiative to become an enemy of a legendary assassin. By the way, since you are going out to gain experience, I'll give you this. Joyce seemed to suddenly remember something and took out a grey glove from the storage ring and handed it to Lee Si. The capital chapter is coming to an end, and in a sense, it has met everyone's expectations of Rivers of Blood. The next chapter is about going out for adventure, which is also the process of Lee Si's strength beginning to explore the new world. I hope everyone likes it. Coughing is too difficult. Tears are flowing out of my coughing while typing. If it's still not better tomorrow, Tingai will go to the hospital. Chapter 187, Shadow Dragon Leather Gloves. What is this? Lee Si asked in confusion as he took the grey gloves Joyce handed over. The grey gloves seemed to be made of the fur of some creature. The grey skin seemed to be swallowing the surrounding light and felt a little cold and silky. He had realized that this was a magical equipment, but for some reason, the gloves did not react when Lisi injected magic into them. However, soon, the panel prompt appeared in front of Lisi. You get the equipment, Shadow Dragon Leather Gloves. Equipment, Shadow Dragon Leather Gloves. Rank, Gold. Introduction. The gloves are made of the extremely precious dragon skin of the neck of the Shadow Dragon. It seems that due to the insufficient ability of the maker, the power of the Shadow Dragon has not been fully exerted, but it is already a very precious equipment. Equipment Effect 1, Agility Attribute plus 100, 50, Mystical Attribute plus 50, 25. Equipment Effect 2, Your Finger Dexterity plus 30%. Equipment Effect 3, when using skills related to the Shadow Plane, you gain plus to Judgment Priority. Equipment Effect 4, Toughness. The material of this pair of gloves is special, and it is extremely difficult to damage. This was found on the assassin during the Holy Festival. Joyce said lightly, the material of this glove is quite special. It should be made of the fur of some creature in the Shadow Plane. It will help you use your shadow ability. Lisi looked at the glove in his hand, and then he understood how the assassin named Bloodblade broke through the kingdom's protective magic circle. It turned out that this equipment has a blessing for the Shadow Jump skill. This effect is somewhat similar to Lisi's Shadow Crown, Assassin Professional Expertise, which has an effect of plus 3 levels of skills related to the Shadow Plane. But it is obvious that the effect of Shadow Crown is stronger. Lisi put on this pair of gloves and tried it out. It felt quite good, and even felt that his affinity with the Shadow Plane had improved. However, because this is a gold level equipment, Lisi cannot fully exert its power. The number in the brackets of the equipment effect 1 is the attribute bonus that Lisi can get now. After trying it, Lisi put it away. Thank you, Uncle Joyce. I like this glove very much. Well, be careful outside. Joyce didn't care, nodded and told Lisi. Since he decided to leave Kangwang City to go out for training, Lisi didn't delay any longer and immediately began to prepare for the adventure. Because most areas of the Jaya world are vast and sparsely populated, the distance between towns is quite far for an ordinary person, and there may be all kinds of magical beasts and all kinds of extraordinary life on the road, so civilians have almost never left the city where they were born in their entire lives. It is precisely because of this situation that the current human kingdoms are basically based on the feudal system, and the vast lords and nobles assist the kingdoms in ruling the vast territory. However, there are also people who are always on the road in this era, and that is the team of the Chamber of Commerce. The circulation of goods in different regions of the Fennel continent is basically built by these traveling merchants. Of course, it is not that merchants like to take all kinds of risks to travel far away, but just for the high profits. You should know that even in the neighboring country of the Kingdom of Fez, the merchants of the Kingdom of Bertich can make several times the profit by preserving and transporting the various common fish on the seashore to Kangwang City through special means, not to mention the luxury goods such as pearls and corals. The current merchant teams are basically formed by large chambers of commerce, hiring enough mercenaries to guard the caravans. At the same time, individual merchants will be accepted to join, as long as they pay the corresponding fees, which can be regarded as sharing the costs. Lisi naturally does not need to personally find a merchant team to join. Mora, who has initially built up a network of contacts and intelligence, has already arranged it. Recently, the Fez Chamber of Commerce has a merchant team preparing to set off from Kangwang City to the Viscount of Oraya in the northern border of the kingdom. Their destination is not far from the Luoxu Mountains. Lisi can follow the caravan on the first part of the journey, so that Lisi does not have to worry about many trivial matters. Although Lisi chose to go out for training, the core area of the central part of the royal capital is the strongest place in the kingdom, so there are no too powerful extraordinary creatures. There is no effect and meaning of training for Lisi, so it is better to sit in the carriage and follow the caravan. In the carriage, he could spare time to study the Arcane and make full use of his time. Lisi also asked the White Dove Chamber of Commerce to prepare materials for him. It must be said that as the White Dove Chamber of Commerce gradually matured and began to operate officially, its development potential gradually began to emerge. With the help of Lisi's influence, Mora has gradually built up the White Dove Chamber of Commerce's business network in Kangwang City. The players that Lisi intended to recruit also played a huge role in this process. The managers of the Chamber of Commerce were very surprised. They didn't know why this group of people were so enthusiastic about work, and they could do any hard work. Their work efficiency was simply amazing. For example, in the Pearl Street that Lisi bought from the kingdom, the players had cleared all the ruins in just a few days, except for sometimes behaving strangely and saying something incomprehensible. These people are simply the best labor force. However, Lisi knew that this situation would not last long. After all, the players came here to play games. When they first entered the game, they could patiently complete the tasks assigned by the White Dove Chamber of Commerce in order to accumulate experience. In the later stage, these tasks with insufficient experience points could no longer attract them. Lisi was not too worried. After all, it was the 3.0 version at that time, and most players had already broken through to the silver level. By then, Lisi would naturally have more other ways to remain attractive to players. Special costumes, exclusive titles, higher end magic props and potions, etc. As a liver god, Lisi knows a lot. After all, there were quite a lot of players who hired him to get these in his previous life. Lisi naturally knows what can attract players more. The current players are just newly sprouted leaks, and it will take a long time before they can be put to use. Lisi is not in a hurry. Anyway, he has enough time. In the White Dove Chamber of Commerce, Lisi put the supplementary supplies into the storage ring. For this outing, he prepared a lot of useful and useless things, and even brought an extra storage ring. After all, Lisi is not an ascetic monk, so why not do something that can make him feel more comfortable? By the way, update the memory ball that he found last time to the White Dove Chamber of Commerce's power panel, so that Lisi does not have to worry about not being able to harvest experience from the players after leaving Kangwang City. Next, Lisi prepared to go to the first magic workshop. Chapter 188 The Remains of Zuling Town. The first magic workshop at the Royal School of Magic of Feast. Are you going out to practice? Fran Stevens raised his eyebrows and leaned on the sofa to look at Lisi in front of him. In front of the two of them were all kinds of sweet desserts and hot black tea that Fran liked as always. Yes, teacher, I feel that my studies have reached a certain bottleneck, and I'm ready to leave Kangwang City for some practice, Lisi said respectfully. Although he was already very familiar with the teacher, he still had to show respect and etiquette. Where are you going? Luoxu Mountains. Oh, there? Fran touched his chin and seemed to remember something. There is really a special place there. Are you going to Zuling Town? Lisi was a little surprised. He didn't expect Fran to guess his destination at once. But it makes sense. As Fran, who has lived for an unknown period of time, he should have visited some special places in the Kingdom of Feast. Recently, he has become keen on traveling in the astral world. There is a special relic there, but I was in a hurry that time, so I didn't stay along before I left. Fran nodded, then smiled and said, it's a very interesting relic, but it's too deep. The owner of the relic should also be a legendary mage. Lisi was a little surprised. Although he had already determined the first goal of this trip, to be honest, he was not very sure. That was the place where a legendary Arcanist rose in the future. In version 5.0, at the forefront of the fight against the Abyss demons, a very powerful legendary Arcanist named Dragasmik suddenly appeared. He was later called the Arcane Master, because this person showed too many personal exclusive arcanes, and the exclusive arcane types used almost cover all spell types: protection, conjuration, evocation, necromancer, transmutation, enchantment, even the most difficult illusion and prophecy. Dragasmik has created quite powerful exclusive arcanes. This is something that even Flame of Judgment, Fran Stevens can't do. When someone later asked him how he did it, he smiled and said, I got the wisdom of my predecessors in Zuling Town. I saw a magnificent palace in my dream, ascended the throne at the end, and accepted the coronation of the wise. When others asked again, he smiled and shook his head and stopped talking. Some people speculated that he got the inheritance of his predecessors, and some speculated that he got a very powerful magic item. After hearing the news, many people immediately set out for Zuling Town, but all returned empty-handed. Li Si naturally thought of getting the treasure in Zuling Town. After all, that was the most likely secret treasure of the Arcane Master that Li Si could get at present, and before Dragismic got the inheritance, it seemed that he was not even a professional, but just an ordinary person. Now it is still many years before Dragismic gets the secret treasure, and Li Si can completely intercept it in advance. So Li Si set the first target of going out to Zuling Town. But Li Si didn't know how Dragismic got the secret treasure, and he still needed to go to Zuling Town to explore. Li Si was prepared to find nothing, but he didn't expect Fran to know the ruins. This was a pleasant surprise. "Are you going to explore this ruins?" Fran showed a special smile on his face and added, "Then you may not even find the door." Li Si nodded. This was also the conclusion of many people who went to explore later. Zuling Town is actually an ordinary town located under the Luoxu Mountains. At that time, many people rushed in. Not only was the town turned upside down, but even the nearby mountains were searched. Not to mention the secret treasure, even the palace mentioned by Dragismic was not found by anyone. So some people suspected that Dragismic was lying, and the real secret treasure was not in that Zuling Town. "Yes, teacher," Li Si said calmly, "I heard that there is a special place there, and I just want to explore it. Please teach me, teacher." Fran nodded, and was very satisfied with Li Si's attitude of facing challenges. After thinking for a moment, Fran slowly said, "The ruins should be without the control of the owner, so it will appear from time to time. But what I can be sure of is that the ruins do not exist in reality. It may be in a plane fragment, or it may be in a special plane overlapping with the main world. Whenever there is a lavender fog in Zuling Town, the place where the ruins are located will be vaguely revealed. But the place where the ruins are located is still an alien plane, so it is impossible to enter directly. I tried to enter at that time, but strangely, I was rejected by the plane where the ruins are located. That should be the place where a legendary wizard left his inheritance. The various arrangements left behind were for selecting the candidates to enter, so I did not force my way in. But it's quite suitable for you, Li Si. Lavender fog. Alien plane. The inheritance of a legendary strong man. Li Si frowned. The information he got from his teacher was relatively sufficient, but there were still many uncertainties. For example, the alternate plane, which is something that a mage can only try to master after breaking through to the gold level. That is, if there is no existing channel between the alternate plane and the main world, Li Si cannot travel to the alternate plane. Fran looked at Li Si with a smile, picked up the black tea, and took a sip. A transparent fist-sized crystal ball suddenly appeared on the table in front of Li Si. There seemed to be a colorful magic aura flowing in it. "What is this?" Li Si raised his head with some doubts, and looked at Fran. "This is a magic prop for communication. You can use it to contact me." Fran's smile had a special meaning on his face, and then he said, "Since you are my disciple, just like Lisa, I can help you once. For example, this time's ruins. If you have no way, I can help you force your way into the ruins. Whether you can get the inheritance depends on yourself." Li Si heard this, and a hint of joy appeared on his face. This is better than giving Li Si a set of gold level equipment. With the support of the big boss, this time the goal seems to be more within reach. "Thank you, teacher. I will try my best." Li Si put the crystal ball in front of him into the storage ring, very satisfied. Li Si was not dissatisfied with Fran's promise to help only once. He was already quite satisfied. You know, Fran was just his teacher after all, and the future path would depend more on him. Fran nodded with a smile. He was indeed very satisfied with Li Si and Lisa, so he spent so much effort. If it were many wizards with bad personalities, they would just give you a magic book and let you study by yourself. Then Fran couldn't laugh anymore. He watched Li Si ransack his workshop, even emptying a magic laboratory on the second floor, and even moving a lot of magic potions and enchanted props that Fran made in his spare time. Finally, Fran couldn't bear it anymore and kicked Li Si out. Looking at the empty laboratory and the messy warehouse, Fran was speechless, then shook his head and laughed. Forget it, it's time to change a batch. Let Dalton go back and get another batch of materials from the kingdom. Chapter 189. The girl took the initiative to attack. Before leaving Kangwang City, Lisi had basically arranged everything. Mora, Bernie and the White Dove Chamber of Commerce had basically been arranged, so Lisi didn't have to worry about it. The players were still working diligently to accumulate experience and money, and thrived with due diligence. After arranging other things, Lisi also went to the villa of Yaya Adventure Group on Jedo Street to visit Yaya, Yazan and others. Lisi cooked for the first time in a long time, and prepared a sumptuous dinner. White pine soup, fried fish with butter, pine mushroom stuffed meat rolls, fest cheese balls, honey sauce carrot stew, satisfying salad, holiday fruit wine, etc. The whole table was filled with it. While enjoying the food with friends, Lisi also told his teammates in the adventure group that he was going to leave Fez City for training. Yaya, who was very happy at first, was a little depressed, but soon cheered up again. She was not someone who would be easily discouraged. Yaya also knew that the king would not allow her to follow Lisi to such a far place, so she did not say anything to embarrass Lisi. Instead, she clenched her fists and whispered something about exercising well, waiting for Lisi to come back and scare him. Yazan and Elena smiled and wished Lisi a safe journey. Elena also gave Lisi a wooden white flower amulet. I heard from Elena that it was the Iying flower that bloomed in the Navia forest in her hometown, which meant a blessing for the safety of those who traveled far away. As for Lumbo, he drank beer carelessly and said with some regret that there was no time. You know, you should have built a solid armor for Lisi in advance. After a long time of excitement in the adventure group villa, Lisi also said goodbye to his friends and returned to his home on Fez Street. After thinking about it, Lisi went directly to the library upstairs. Standing in front of the door of the library, Lisi did not push the door open and walk in as usual, but smiled and knocked on the door gently a few times. Instead of waiting for Lisa's response, a flustered sound of footsteps was heard inside. Lisi pushed the door open and saw a few magic books that had not been closed yet placed on the floor next to the French window not far away. It seems that Lisa was just flipping through the books here, but was startled by Lisi's knocking on the door and retreated back to her little room. Gently walking towards Lisa's small compartment, Lisi did not knock on the door this time, but pushed it open. Lisa was wrapped in a quilt, lying on the bed like a dead fish. Lisi sat beside Lisa's bed with a grin on his face, as if waiting for something. The soft mattress sank slightly, and Lisa seemed to feel that Lisi was sitting next to her, and her body stiffened slightly. The shame in her heart began to surge in her heart again, and the memories of that night under the moonlight began to attack Lisa again. Lisi gently put his hand on Lisa's shoulder, feeling the warmth and softness of the girl's body through the thin quilt. Lisa did not move, as if she acquiesced to Lisi's somewhat intimate behavior. You ran too fast last time, and I didn't have time to tell you. Lisi's voice rang in Lisa's ears. In 2 days, I will leave Kangwang City to go out for training, and I may be away for a long time. Lisa was a little stunned when she heard Lisi's words suddenly. Master Lisi, are you going to be away for a long time? Then, the girl's mind seemed to have suddenly become a mess. Master Lisi's training should be a very important thing for him. But Lisa inexplicably didn't want Lisi to be too far away from her. If it was the same as before, it would be fine. Staying alone in the library, living a carefree life, quietly reading books, practicing magic, although a little boring. Time passed quickly. But it seemed that everything was different from that day on. Lisi broke into Lisa's world somewhat forcefully, breaking her dull life. Lisa felt that the appearance of Master Lisi seemed to have dyed her little world with a different color and brought some fresh air. Since then, even when Lisa was reading alone, the shadow of Lisi would pop up in her mind from time to time. She would not always eat alone. Lisi would often bring a lot of delicious desserts and black tea to share with her. She would not always read alone. Lisi would sit on the wooden floor next to her with a book from time to time, and the faint fragrance of ink lingered around the two of them. Her world was no longer limited to the small library, because Master Lisi, Lord Joyce, never restricted her from going out again. Master Lisi would take her to practice magic in the courtyard, and occasionally take her to stroll on the streets outside. The girl suddenly realized that it seemed that the most exciting and impressive memory of her many years was the day she spent with Lisi in the past month. Until that night, under the moonlight, feeling Lisi's broad palm caressing her shoulders, Lisa quietly got out of the quilt, showing her small and delicate face, and looking at Lisi, saying pitifully, "Master Lisi, can I go with you?" Lisi looked at Lisa's cute appearance, and couldn't help it. He rolled up the quilt on Lisa's body, rolled Lisa into a sandwich sushi, and held her in his arms. "I want to, but it's a pity that I can't." Teacher Steven said that, although Lisa's talent is very strong and there is no big bottleneck in breaking through to the legend, there are still some shortcomings. Teacher Steven's plans to guide you well during this period and teach you to become an arcane master. This is good for your future. Hearing that Lisi and the teacher had arranged the future path for her very considerately, Lisa, who had always been well behaved, had to nod and said no more. Although Lisa was a little depressed, she was soon distracted by her current abnormal situation. Lisa twisted her body uncomfortably and found that Lisi had rolled her up tightly. She had no choice but to look at Lisi pitifully. "Can I only say that this look is too cute. Foul." Lisi almost couldn't control himself. He leaned down and whispered in Lisa's ear, "From now on, you don't have to call me Master Lisi anymore. Just call me Lisi directly." The white and tender earlobe felt a warm breath sprayed by Lisi and began to slowly turn a bright red. Lisa felt that her brain was thinking a little slower and said vaguely, Lisi. Lisi looked at Lisa, who was beginning to be confused and couldn't help but put his face close to her and said with a smile, "I will be away for a long time." "Lisa, will you miss me?" "Yes." "Then do you want to leave a souvenir?" "Yes." "Then can you kiss me?" Lisa's eyes were covered with a layer of mist, looking at the handsome face close at hand. It seemed that this was indeed the truth. The pure and innocent girl raised her head and bravely went forward. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Angela's Awakening. Lisi walked out of the library contentedly, feeling that everything in the world was so beautiful. I have to say that, although I feel a little guilty, this feeling is really great. At this moment, Lisa was still lying on the bed in a daze, not knowing when she would wake up. It can only be said that, although Lisi did not have much experience and was more of a theoretical master, Lisa, who was a blank sheet of paper, had a negative defense. So what else did I not consider? Lisi always felt that he seemed to have forgotten something. It shouldn't be like this. The kingdom, the chamber of commerce, teachers, and friends. I should have considered everything. What is missing? Just as Lisi was knocking on his forehead, a flash of blood appeared in front of him. A pretty white-haired girl appeared in front of him. The girl gave Lisi a very familiar feeling, but for a moment Lisi couldn't remember who this person was. But soon, Lisi didn't have to worry. The girl's words exposed her identity. The white-haired girl supported her waist with both hands and shouted, "Lisi, I'm hungry. I want to eat 10 fruit muffins." Oh my god, it turned out to be Angela. Lisi looked at the white-haired girl in front of him with surprise and looked at her carefully. If Angela's human form was a cute little lolly of about 10 years old before, she is now a pretty girl of 15 or 16 years old. It seems that Kane's divine power is indeed very helpful to Angela. Not only has she grown greatly, but even the improvement in strength is quite amazing. Lisi felt that Angela's breath was much deeper and seemed to have a hint of sacred charm. Is this the breath of the Son of God? Lisi silently calculated in his heart. When he met the gods and the Son of God in the game in his previous life, he could only imagine it through data and descriptions, and he would not have such an intuitive feeling as now. Angela looked at Lisi motionless, just staring at herself for a long time, and she couldn't help it. She had just woken up from the blood cocoon and was very hungry. She came straight here because she felt Lisi's breath. Why didn't Lisi care about her at all? After being patted by Angela angrily, Lisi reacted and smiled and prepared to take Angela to ask the chef to cook. Seeing this, Angela turned into a white little bat and lay on Lisi's head. She was a little tired after absorbing Kane's power and didn't want to leave. Lisi was just the transportation tool. The chef's skills were very fast. Because he knew that there was a little bat in the family who liked to eat fruit muffins, he had prepared a lot of semi-finished materials before. Soon, more than a dozen fruit muffins with different flavors appeared on the table. Angela's eyes were shining, and she pounced on the hot muffins and started to eat. It's not because it's easier to eat in bat form. No matter which form, Angela has the same appetite, but according to her, it's more enjoyable to eat in the form of a little bat. Eat slowly. Looking at Angela's wolfing down, Lisi couldn't help but smile and said. For Angela, Lisi no longer regarded her as the gold level boss in Maguire's Tomb of Death. During this period of time together, he regarded her more as his little sister. It's just that this sister is indeed a bit strong. Not only has the strength of the gold level, but now she has become the son of Kane. In a blink of an eye, Angela had already finished eating 5 muffins, and her eating speed slowed down, no longer in such a hurry. Lisi looked at the flat belly of the little bat. Is this a dimensional stomach? The food she ate was probably 3 or 4 times the size of her body. Angela, how do you feel? What did you get this time? Lisi asked with a smile. Angela's little head poked out from the half-eaten muffin, scratched it with her little claws and said, I feel like I'm stronger than before, and my body is much stronger. I seem to have gained a special power in my body, but I don't know how to use it yet. Special power. It should be divine power. If you can master it smoothly, you should be able to use Kane's magic. But looking at Angela's appearance, it may take a long time for her to figure it out on her own. Lisi thought of Marian's suggestion, pondered for a while, and asked, that should be the case. It is very difficult to fully master the power of your ancestor. So, do you want to go to Frostblood Castle with Marian and learn from Burns? But I don't want to go that far, just follow Lisi. Angela said without thinking. Angela, I'm going to go out for training recently, and I can't take you with me. After all, you are so strong, and it won't be effective for me to take you with me. Lisi shook his head and explained to Angela. Then I will follow you secretly. Angela tilted her little head and looked at Lisi. What's the difference between that and being with me? Lisi laughed, but still touched Angela gratefully. Is that so? Okay. Angela nodded and suddenly felt that the fruit pancake in front of her was not fragrant anymore. You don't have to be like this. If you master the use of divine power earlier, you can go on adventures with me in the future. Lisi smiled and comforted Angela. Going there is indeed good for you. Maybe I may go there to see you while I'm training. Then it's a deal. Angela thought about it and agreed to go to Frostblood Castle with Marian. It's not easy for me. Marian must bleed. Lisi thought so in his heart and crushed the communication crystal that Marian had given him before. After a while, Marian appeared at the door of the mansion, but he waited there politely and did not enter without permission. Lisi appeared in front of Marian with Angela. This vampire seemed to have lived too well in Kangwang City and had gained weight. Marian looked at Angela, who seemed to be reborn, and nodded. As expected of the Son of God, you have completely absorbed the divine power of the ancestor. Lisi told Marian that Angela was willing to go to Frostblood Castle with him, and he was very happy. Thank you very much for your help, Lord Lisi. You will always be a friend of the blood race. Marian turned to Angela and said, please rest assured, Son of God, you will definitely grow up enough in Frostblood Castle. Lisi, you must come to see me. Angela looked at Marian with some disdain, hesitated for a long time, but still did not fly over his head, and turned into a girl, and stood beside Marian. Frostblood Castle also welcomes you, Lord Lisi. Marian nodded and added, please accept this, Lord Lisi. As long as you come to the Duke of Burns in the Kingdom of Bolin, I can sense it, and welcome you to Frostblood Castle. I believe you will not be disappointed. Lisi took the blood-colored badge handed over by Marian, on which was engraved a blood-colored waning moon. I see. Lisi put the badge into the storage ring, looked at Angela, who was looking anxiously, and couldn't help but add, I will go, don't worry. Lisi felt strange, as if he was sending his own child to school, but Angela was still very sensible, and didn't cry or make a fuss. Yeah. Angela nodded, and her mood gradually improved. In that case, then we'll take our leave. Merian took off his hat, bowed slightly to Lisi, and a moment later he and Angela disappeared in front of Lisi. Update completed. Thank you on your knees. Chapter 191. Fez Caravan. In the lower city of Kangwang City, near the North Gate. This is one of the busiest gates of Kangwang City. Many travelers heading to the north of Kangwang City set out from this gate. Some green moss has already climbed up between the gaps of the dark grey bricks, giving the weathered city wall a sense of age. At this time, a large group of people and horses were organizing their team in an open space not far from the city gate. This is where all the caravans preparing to go to the north gather before their trip. Most of the trucks waiting here are of the same shape. A vertical longsword logo is engraved on one side of the carriage. This is a logo of the Fez Chamber of Commerce, the first chamber of commerce in the kingdom. This also means that the organizers and leaders of this chamber of commerce are all the Fez Chamber of Commerce. The reputation and strength of the Fez Chamber of Commerce are naturally beyond doubt, so there are many different types of carriages that have arrived here, and they line up behind the caravan team honestly, waiting to set off. The leader of this caravan, Rock Riley, the director of the Feast Chamber of Commerce, was checking the preparation of the caravan's carriages, whether all the goods were loaded on the carriages, whether the waterproof cloth on the carriages was tied firmly, whether all the Chamber of Commerce guards were present, etc. He needed to check all these things one by one. This could not be done carelessly. You have to know that this trip is to the Viscount of Arlair in the northern border of the kingdom. Many places along the way are sparsely populated. If something goes wrong due to poor preparation, losing some goods is still a small matter, but losing your life will be too late to regret. Therefore, no matter how well prepared Rock was before, he would personally check it again before each departure. This is also the reason why he became the director of the Feast Chamber of Commerce and led this caravan when he just turned 30. Lord Rock, the guards are all ready, and the White Wolf mercenary group and other mercenaries hired by the Chamber of Commerce have also assembled. Zulf, the leader of the caravan guards, walked to Rock's side and said respectfully, "Zulf, thank you for your hard work this time." Luokui looked at the burly and steady middle-aged warrior in front of him, and nodded with satisfaction. Although the caravan would issue commission tasks every time and hire experienced mercenaries to join the caravan, the most important force to maintain the caravan was the Feast Chamber of Commerce's own guard force. In necessary circumstances, only their own people could be relied on, but this situation was quite rare. Zorf was one of the most experienced silver-level guard commanders in the Feast Chamber of Commerce. It was probably because of that person that the Chamber of Commerce's top leaders allowed Zorf to participate in this caravan. Luokui knew it in his heart. After all, this time the team was only going to the north, still within the kingdom. Generally speaking, the teams that Zorf's level of guard commanders followed were caravans heading to other countries. Luokui naturally had to give Zorf the corresponding respect. "Is that lord here?" Zorf asked in a deep voice. Only the two of them knew the identity of that lord in the caravan. After all, that lord specifically asked not to make it known to everyone. Wait a little longer, it should be soon. Luokui was not too sure, so he naturally did not dare to ask anyone to urge that lord. You know, because of that lord's request, his caravan should have been ready to set off a week ago, but they had to wait for an extra week, which was enough to show how much the Chamber of Commerce valued that lord. However, although Luokui and Zulf knew it in their hearts, the small merchants who temporarily joined the caravan did not dare to say anything, and some of the mercenaries hired by the Feast Chamber of Commerce had some complaints. Fink looked up at the sky. The sun had risen to a relatively high position, but the Feast caravan did not seem to be ready to set off yet. Somewhat impatiently, Fink complained to Magath, the captain of the White Wolf mercenary group, who was standing beside him. "What's the situation with this Feast Chamber of Commerce? When they accepted the commission, they said they would set off a week ago, but it has been delayed until now. Why do they seem to be in no hurry at all?" Magath ignored Fink and sat on the carriage beside him, wiping the long sword in his hand carefully with a brown rag. Magath wiped off the almost non-existent dust, as if he were treating his closest lover, then sheathed his sword and glanced at Fink. This kid has talent, and he is already a high-level bronze warrior at a young age, but he is just a little too impatient. How can he be so impatient? Magath shook his head, slapped Fink on the head, and scolded, "You bastard, you talk so much nonsense, just wait for me, are you in such a hurry to see the God of Dawn?" "Oh, Uncle Magath." Fink, who was taught a lesson, covered his head and replied in a muffled voice. He actually just wanted to talk, and he still didn't dare to resist Magath. After all, the leader of the White Wolf mercenary group is a gold level warrior, and under him are the captains of the silver level teams. Magath is one of them, and he is the strongest high level silver warrior in the team. This time, it is Magath's mercenary team that accepted the commission of the Feast Chamber of Commerce. Just when Fink was bored and dazed, Magath suddenly jumped off the carriage and called his teammates to get ready to set off. The person they are waiting for should be here. Fink looked up and saw a brown and luxurious carriage pulled by 2 horses not far away, slowly driving towards the caravan. The caravan's leaders, Rocky and Zulf, walked out of the team together and headed towards the carriage. Fink knew Rocky. After all, the last time he came to the mercenary group to entrust a task, it was this manager of the Feast Chamber of Commerce who came. This shrewd and graceful look left a deep impression on the young Fink. The brown carriage stopped in front of the caravan's camp, and the door on one side opened. Rocky and Zulf stood beside the carriage, greeting it respectfully. It seemed that after a while, Rocky and Zulf left the carriage and returned to the caravan. After a while, the whole caravan became noisy, and everyone started to get busy and get ready to set off. Fink was still a little confused when he heard Magath complaining, "It looks like another big shot is going to travel with us this time. What a hassle. I hope it's not some annoying noble." Fink turned his head carefully to look at his captain, and then he was hit on the head again. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and move your luggage onto the carriage." Oh. Soon, the entire caravan was reorganized. It seemed that, because the caravan had to wait for a long time this time, many merchants chose to join. The carriages of all sizes spread out for hundreds of meters. Under the guidance of the guards of Kangwang City, the entire caravan slowly passed through the city gate and headed towards the northern border of the kingdom. Chapter 190. To the first day of the journey, Li Si was somewhat helpless. Yes, Li Si felt quite regretful now. If he were to make a choice again, he would definitely not choose to go with the Feast Chamber of Commerce. When Mora was helping him to contact and arrange things, Li Si thought that he would just follow the caravan and be a transparent person. Can we only say that the Feast Chamber of Commerce really attaches too much importance to the newly promoted Marquis Kane? Apart from anything else, the luxurious 2-horse carriage that Li Si is riding now is a rather outrageous thing. After all, the caravan's long journey is not an ordinary trip, and it is not suitable for ordinary noble carriages. It is more about driving in the city. For long distance travel, the kind of topless trucks are more used, which are mainly strong, durable and light. But the carriage that Li Si is using now is specially made by skilled craftsmen at the Feast Chamber of Commerce at a high price. On the premise of ensuring comfort and sturdiness, it is even enchanted with the advanced magic pattern of Light Spirit, which greatly reduces the weight of the carriage and also reduces bumps, making the ride more comfortable. Not to mention the layout inside. Unlike the 2 sofas and armchairs in the general noble carriage, this carriage takes into account the comfort of travel and combines them into a soft sofa bed. There are also small tables and armchairs next to it, which is simply the use of space to the extreme. What a damn hedonism. Li Si was lying on the soft sofa bed, condemning with some dissatisfaction. But this bed is quite comfortable. Just now, the manager and the captain of the caravan came to meet him, and he simply sent them away. Li Si knew very well that these 2 did not want him to help. Their greatest hope was to stay honest and not get into any danger. Li Si was also happy and comfortable. Professional matters were left to professionals. He was not a person who liked to show off. After a while, Li Si felt the carriage under him shake slightly, and the caravan officially set off. He lifted the curtain and saw that he should be in the center of the caravan in this carriage, which was also the safest place. Shaking his head, Li Si lowered the curtain. Since it has come to this, Li Si does not have to change to an ordinary carriage. As long as he can reach the north normally, it will be fine. The current situation is also good. The sound insulation effect of the carriage is also good. Li Si can study the arcane in the carriage, which is also a full use of time. The entire caravan are slowly moving towards the north. The guards of the feast caravan are mainly with the caravan, responsible for maintaining and sorting out the order of the caravan's operation. The accompanying hired mercenaries are mainly responsible for exploring the road ahead, detecting dangers and finishing the caravan. The White Wolf mercenary group mainly accepts the task of escorting the caravan, and naturally they are also experts in it. Magath arranged all the mercenaries of the team to go out and explore everywhere, leaving only one person to drive the carriage to follow the team. As for Fink, Magath brought him with him for easy instruction at any time. Although Fink is a little noisy, he is really talented and is also quite outstanding in the White Wolf mercenary group. Therefore, the leader asked Magath to take good care of him and impart more experience. Since Magath agreed, he will keep it in mind. At this time, it was just right to bring him along so that he could get familiar with the precautions for the caravan escort mission. Fink and Magath, who had been on several missions with the team, were also very familiar with it. Both of them were warriors, and their current position was not far in front of the caravan. They were also particular about this position, so that they could provide timely support to the hunters and fellow thieves who were exploring the road ahead. The two of them were not walking too fast, but rather seemed to be relaxed. After all, the caravan was full of carriages loaded with goods, so the speed was naturally not fast. Fink looked around and asked Magath, "Uncle, do you think the person on that carriage is a noble?" Magath did not care about Fink's distraction. After all, the caravan was in the hinterland of the Kingdom of Fez, near the capital Kangwang City, and it was basically impossible to encounter danger. Being tense all the time would be a waste of energy. It should be. If you look closely, you can find that there is a blood red sword emblem on the carriage. Ah. Magath looked at Fink helplessly and added, "That is the special emblem of the Feast Chamber of Commerce. Not everyone can use it. Only the great nobles. The Feast Chamber of Commerce will arrange such a carriage with such an emblem." "Is that so?" Fink touched his head, as if he suddenly realized something. Magath estimated that he didn't understand much, so he had to patiently remind him. Who knows which great noble followed the caravan this time? "I didn't see the noble guards, but it's quite strange. However, even so, you have to pay attention. Understand, Fink?" I know. I'll stay away from that carriage." "Okay." Magath was a little helpless. This kid will fall hard sooner or later. The time of departure today was already quite late, and there was no long stay in the middle. It was not until it was getting dark that they settled down in the camp that the mercenaries had found in advance. Traveling outside is quite hard, even if you just leave Kangwang City. The guards and men of the caravan quickly started a fire, boiled hot water, and stewed food for tonight. This is a daily routine of the caravan. Except for special circumstances, they generally only stop in the morning and evening to make fire and cook and eat hot food. If they are hungry during the day, they can use dry food. Although they will stop from time to time to let the animals rest and recover their strength, it is not enough to make a fire. Ding ding. There was a knock on the door, and Lee Si opened his eyes and woke up from his arcane research. When he opened the door, he saw Luokui, the head of the caravan. "Lord Lee Si, we plan to rest here tonight. Do you need anything else?" "No, thank you for your hard work." Lee Si nodded, and then added, "You don't have to ask me everything. I don't care about these. If there is anything, I will let Anders find you." Anders is the driver of the carriage that Lee Si is riding now. He was specially arranged by the Feast Chamber of Commerce and the carriage. "Okay, Lord Lee Si, if you have anything to say, just tell me." Luokui nodded. Before he set off, he was naturally told by the higher-ups to take good care of this gentleman. Otherwise, the first day of departure would be the busiest time of the entire trip, and he would need to sort out many things, and he would not have much spare time to greet him. However, it seemed that this Lord Marquis was not difficult to get along with. Since that was what he said, Luokui was ready to do other things. Lee Si stretched his back, and his bones creaked. After getting off the carriage, Lee Si was boredly looking around at the traveling merchants and guards packing up the camp when he saw Fink and Magath returning to the camp from outside. "It's still late. I'll rest quickly tomorrow." Chapter 193 The future leader of the Blood Wolf Knights. This time, when he went to the northern border of the kingdom, Lisi planned to practice his other professional skills. Recently, he used spells more frequently, and the skills of warriors, hunters, assassins, monks, etc. also need to be practiced from time to time, so Lisi prepared a set of light leather armor when he went out, instead of choosing to wear a noble dress or a wizard robe. It is now mid-October, and the weather is starting to get colder. Lisi wore a light grey long-sleeved trousers, with a simple leather armor on top, looking like a new adventurer. Seeing Fink and Magath, Lisi's eyes lit up, and he smiled and nodded to the mercenaries. Fink looked confused, but he still nodded and greeted him in a friendly manner, but Magath looked indifferent. The camp has been arranged properly, and the caravan's grooms untied the animals from the trucks. All the trucks surrounded the camp, and the people and horses rested under the trucks at night. When the caravan goes out to travel, it's okay to lose some goods, but it's troublesome if people or horses are injured. The firewood crackled in the campfire, the cooking pot on the orange flame was whirring, and the aroma of food began to spread. Small sparks occasionally splashed on the people sitting around the campfire, but few people cared. Most people were chatting with each other, talking about the latest interesting things, and relaxing today's fatigue. The White Wolf mercenary group was the same, except for assigning a few people to participate in the caravan's night watch every day. They didn't have to worry about other things. Fink was listening to his teammates telling about the various thrilling events in their previous adventures. Whether facing monsters and beasts, or encountering natural disasters and man-made disasters, he sat aside and listened with relish. For Fink, who was finally allowed by the leader to follow the Magath team to complete the commissioned mission, the outside world was even more mysterious and exciting, much more interesting than the lower city of Kangwang City. Fink even wanted to encounter some beasts as soon as possible, so that he could try the sword edge that had been polished for a long time. Which young man doesn't want to be the hero in the poems sung by the bard? At this time, Lisi also came over and naturally found a place to sit down by the campfire where the White Wolf mercenary group was. The mercenaries didn't care. There was no clear distinction in the camp. There were also many single mercenaries sitting around the campfire. Everyone was just making do with it. After all, they still had to travel for a long time. This time of day was also the time for the members of the caravan to get to know each other and exchange feelings. Are you the person just now? Seeing Lisi sitting over, Fink became alert. After all, it was rare to see people of the same age as him in the caravan, and Fink was quite curious about Lisi. Well, hello. Lisi also waved his hand and nodded to thank others for the boiled hot water. Look at your outfit. Are you also a mercenary? Fink moved his butt, leaned over, and asked curiously, I don't think I saw you when I set out. Are you from the Feast Chamber of Commerce or a single mercenary from the Mercenary Guild? To be honest, Fink's familiarity may be unbearable for most people, but Lisi didn't think there was anything wrong. Or rather, he came here for Fink. When getting off the car to rest, Lisi happened to see Fink standing in the White Wolf mercenary group. At that time, Lisi felt that he was familiar, and after a while he remembered that the leader of the Blood Wolf Knights, Fink. I had heard that the leader of the Feast Kingdom Legion was once a mercenary, and Lisi didn't expect to meet Fink when he was young here. I just don't know what he went through, so that the cheerful and outgoing Fink eventually became the taciturn, heroic and fighting leader of the Knights. Lisi was very curious, and it happened that he had nothing to do at the moment, so he came to contact this young version of Fink. Lisi was also very interested in the secret skill of the future Blood Wolf Knights, Blood Wolf Haunting, but it seemed that Fink in front of him should not have created it yet. Not really. I set out with my master, and he is resting in the car now. Lisi pointed to his carriage not far away, and said with a smile, that carriage? Fink looked in the direction Lisi pointed, and was a little surprised. Wasn't that the luxurious carriage that arrived last this morning? Magath on the side also noticed Lisi, who was talking to Fink, but did not say anything, secretly observing Lisi with the corner of his eye. Fink also looked up at Magath, and seeing that the boss did not respond, he continued, I didn't expect you to be in that carriage. I have been curious for a long time before. Let me introduce myself. My name is Fink. Lisi shook Fink's right hand and smiled. My name is Moriarty. Lee Si did not use his real name, but used the name he used when registering his identity in the mercenary guild. "Hello, Moriarty." Fink patted Lee Si's shoulder and said with a smile. Then he approached Lee Si and asked slyly, "Who is your master? I see that the caravan attaches great importance to it. Luokui has been there several times." Lee Si nodded and said, "I'll tell you quietly, the person in the car is Lord Marquis Kane, and I'm the personal servant of Lord Marquis." "Oh, Lord Marquis, I haven't seen that kind of nobleman yet." Fink's eyes were full of curiosity. He turned his head and continued to ask Lee Si, "What does Lord Marquis Kane look like? Is he an old man?" Lee Si turned his head and glanced at Fink. What a clear stupidity and innocence. It seems that Fink is still very immature now. Although Lee Si doesn't say much, there are actually many loopholes. People who are a little more experienced should have noticed something wrong. "It's okay, the Lord is still relatively young. Is that so?" Fink nodded, and the image of Marquis Kane in his mind changed from a white-bearded grandfather to a middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s. He sighed and seemed to be very yearning for the nobility. Yes, becoming a noble of the kingdom is the lifelong expectation of many civilians and mercenaries. Lee Si noticed the expectation in Fink's eyes. Young people like to fantasize about the future. Unlike Magath on the side, who seemed to have discovered something, Lee Si had already felt his eyes sweeping over from time to time. But soon, Lee Si didn't care about Magath. The cooking pot in front of him began to boil, and the aroma of food began to emanate. Although it was just the simplest vegetable soup, the guys in the caravan threw some easy-to-carry potato and radish cuts into it, and also put some pickled bacon. The caravan couldn't be particular when they were away from home, but this hot vegetable soup with black bread was also quite delicious on a somewhat chilly night. Chapter 194, Forest Python. The next morning, the caravan had already started packing up the camp and preparing to set off. After extinguishing the campfire from last night, Fink saw Lee Si coming over. Last night, Lee Si proposed to Fink that he was a little curious about the daily work of the mercenary group and asked if he could follow Fink and his team for a few days. Fink, who already regarded Lee Si as his friend, was naturally willing to do so, but he was worried that Captain Magath would not agree. However, when he made the request to Magath, Magath just looked him up and down in silence, nodded and agreed directly. When Fink went back excitedly to tell Lee Si the good news, Magath shook his head helplessly and said with his teammates beside him, "Is this kid going to have shit luck?" His teammates gave him a look that said, "You know what happened," and smiled and went to get another bowl of vegetable and bacon soup. "Good morning, Moriarty," Fink greeted Lee Si. He felt that this journey would not be boring because he could meet a friend of the same age on his first caravan escort commission. "Good morning, Fink. When are we leaving?" "Wait a minute, we have to act in advance before the caravan leaves. After all, we need to find out the safety ahead for the caravan in advance." Fink spoke to Lee Si patiently and repeated to Lee Si the precautions that Magath had taught him before. Fink unexpectedly felt good about being a teacher. Not long after, Lee Si followed Fink and the others to the front of the journey. The others went to investigate the situation according to the division of tasks, and Lee Si and Fink followed Magath. Magath originally thought that Lee Si might not be able to keep up, so he slowed down his pace slightly, but when he saw that Lee Si looked very relaxed and was even joking with Fink, he returned to his normal state of progress. The time for investigation was boring, but Lee Si was not in a hurry. This time he went out to experience. He had planned to experience most of the things. After all, how much of Lee Si's experience in the game in his previous life was applicable in this real world? Lee Si needed to try it out little by little. At the same time, Lee Si also had other plans. That was Fink. He planned to see his current strength and combat skills. I don't know if Fink has mastered the special combat skill of Bloodwolf Haunting, or its prototype. The reason why Lee Si is so obsessed with Bloodwolf Haunting is because this skill has a very special effect. Bloodwolf Haunting is a status combat skill that allows the warrior to form a layer of blood-colored airflow around the body, which improves the physical strength and improves the user's strength attribute to a certain extent. But the special thing about this skill is that the addition of the strength attribute is determined by the level of the user's other secondary attributes. Lee Si remembered that when the skill level of Blood Wolf Haunting is raised to the highest level, 10% of all attribute points, except the strength attribute, can be added to the user's strength. Lee Si was not a warrior in his previous life, so he only had a simple understanding of this skill, but he knew that this skill was a very powerful skill for warriors. Many warrior players chose to join the Blood Wolf Knights in order to obtain this skill, but Lee Si was not in a hurry to test Fink. If there was no opportunity for Fink to try his hand during the exploration, he could find an opportunity to practice with him when he returned to the camp at night. But soon Lee Si's eyes moved, and it seemed that there was no need to be so troublesome. Soon, Magath seemed to have noticed something, and his face changed. Damn, what happened to the person exploring the way ahead? How could a monster slip in? He cursed in his heart, but Magath's actions were not affected at all. Clang! Magath drew out his long sword and signaled Lee Si and Fink to get ready. Lee Si took out his long sword and placed it in front of him. He planned to disguise himself as a warrior using a long sword on this journey. Fink also held a long spear and seemed to be eager to try it out. Magath picked up a stone from the ground and smashed it towards the tree in front of him on the right. In a flash, the stone sank into the tree canopy with a whistling sound. I saw a long green shadow falling from the tree. Bang! The shadow fell to the ground, and Lee Si recognized what kind of monster it was at a glance. Bronze monster, Lin Python. This is a relatively common snake monster, and it can only grow to the strength of high bronze level at most. The forest python moves slowly, but is extremely powerful. It is good at hiding in the jungle and ambush prey. It relies on its strong body to kill prey by wrapping around it. It is not poisonous. The excellent hiding ability of the forest python seems to have prevented Magath's teammates from noticing it. It hid aside and seemed to want to attack the three people. However, although this forest python looked like an adult monster, it was not a threat to the three people present. Magath saw that it was a forest python, and he relaxed and put his sword back into the scabbard. Fink, you go and deal with this long snake. It would be easier for Magath to do it himself, but this was also a good opportunity. It would be good for Fink to practice with him watching. Fink nodded excitedly and walked towards the forest python with a spear in his hand. Lee Si stood aside and watched, just in time to see what level the future leader of the Blood Wolf Knights was now. This forest python was nearly 10 meters long. It was still a little dizzy after being hit by Magath, but it quickly reacted, coiled its body tightly, raised its upper body, and spit out a bright red snake tongue to bite Fink, who was approaching. Although Fink was a little excited, he didn't rush to attack. Instead, he circled around the forest python and observed it from a safe range. The forest python also kept an eye on Fink. The threat from Magath made it dare not flee, so it could only prepare to face Fink in front of it. Fink looked serious, and his attention was highly focused on the enemy in front of him. After waiting for a moment, Fink suddenly stabbed towards the head of the forest python, as if he wanted to test the reaction of the forest python first. However, the forest python moved quickly and dodged Fink's attack with a shake of his head. Although the speed of the forest python was not good, it also referred to the speed of its movement. The speed of its upper body dodging in place was still very fast. Fortunately, Fink was prepared and retracted his strength in time. Taking this opportunity, the forest python tensed its body and suddenly jumped towards Fink like a spring. This was a bit beyond Fink's expectation. In order to get close to the forest python, the distance between him and the forest python was only about 1 meter, and this distance was still easy for the forest python to jump out with its body strength. Magath and Lee Si, who were standing not far away, were very calm and seemed not to have seen the danger that Fink was in. Magath looked at Lee Si and asked respectfully, "What do you think of Fink? He is very good, and his physical fitness seems to be much stronger than that of ordinary bronze warriors." Lee Si watched Fink swinging his spear and instantly hitting the upper body of the forest python, and then leaping backwards with the force, and nodded and asked, "Chapter 195 Recruiting? That's true." Magath nodded and said, "Fink has been a talented kid since he was young, and he has trained his body to be very tough, which makes him stronger than other warriors of the same level." Lee Si smiled when he heard this and seemed to be a little interested. While Lisi and Maggot were communicating in a relaxed tone, Fink was in a tough fight. Fink had already understood one thing from the simple fight just now. That is, the physical strength of this forest python is much stronger than his, so when Fink waved his spear to borrow the force to jump away, the forest python seemed to be unaffected. There was no other way. Most human warriors of the same level were not as physically fit as the monsters, so they needed to make up for this by honing their combat skills and cooperation. Although the forest python was not a very smart monster, it had acquired some combat wisdom during its long growth process. For example, now, the forest python was facing Fink head on, with its lower body coiled as much as possible, trying to protect the soft parts of its body. Fink took a deep breath to adjust his state, holding the gun with both hands, and bending his knee slightly, to prepare for the attack. Fink was still looking for the weakness of the forest python, with the tip of the spear emitting cold light. Soon, Fink found that the forest python protected its weakness very well, and did not give him any chance. If there is no chance, then create one. Keeping in mind the teachings of the predecessors of the White Wolf mercenary group, Fink flashed his body, and swung the spear in his hand, to stab the head of the forest python at a very fast speed. The forest python also noticed Fink's action. It had been prepared for a long time and reacted. Its body, which was ready to go, suddenly shot towards Fink's body, as if it was ready to wrap Fink's body. But its plan failed, because Fink quickly stopped the attack in his hand and dodged sideways. Although Fink's spear stabbing just now seemed very fast, it did not use much power, so he easily retracted the spear. However, the forest python's attack was not so easy to stop. The body suddenly stretched out, which also caused the soft abdomen that it had been carefully protecting to be exposed. This was the opportunity Fink had been waiting for. He dodged to the side of the forest python and thrust out with his spear. Hiss. The deep roar of the forest python was clearly heard by Lisi and Magath, who were standing far away. The slightly lighter green scales on the forest python's abdomen were splashed in the air along with red blood. The pain stimulated the nerves of the forest python and made it go crazy. Fink did not continue to attack. Instead, he stepped aside like a patient hunter, dodging the fierce attack of the forest python and quietly waiting for the next opportunity. A fist-sized wound appeared on the abdomen of the forest python, and the whitened muscles were still twitching. Although the wound looked scary, it was not too serious for the huge body of the forest python. However, the pain of the wound seemed to burn out the last of the forest python's sanity. The forest python no longer waited and rushed towards Fink like crazy. Fink was calm at this time, unlike a normal person. He did not face the edge of the forest python directly, but chose to slowly deal with it. Relying on his superior movement speed, Fink carefully avoided the attacks of the forest python, and from time to time seized the opportunity to use his spear to leave wounds on the body of the forest python one after another. This was also a very embarrassing part for the forest python. As a bronze level monster, it had superior physical strength and concealment ability, but the only shortcoming was that the forest python did not have a long range attack like spell skill. So when it faced Fink's attack method, it seemed very powerless. However, the strong vitality of the forest python also made the battle last for a long time. After about half an hour, with Fink sweating profusely, the forest python finally couldn't hold on, and his body full of wounds lay on the ground, no longer having the strength to resist. Fink walked forward carefully, and after making sure there was no accident, he shot the forest python in the highest 7-inch place during the battle, and killed it completely. Lisi and Magath also came over at this time. Magath looked at the corpse of the forest python on the ground, and a smile appeared on his serious face. Well done. Lisi looked at Fink, whose skin was slightly red. He was exhausted, and stood beside the forest python with his spear. Although he was very tired, he had a very proud expression on his face. After all, it was a rare achievement to be able to defeat a monster of the same level. It would allow Fink to brag about it to his friends for a long time after returning. Unable to bear Fink's complacency, Magath slapped Fink on the head and scolded him. Don't be so proud of yourself, just because you praised it a little. Although you were not injured in the battle just now, your attack efficiency was too low. Otherwise, would it have taken so long? Magath glared at Fink after he finished speaking. What are you looking at? Why don't you go back and find the caravan to deal with this snake? or do you want to do it yourself? Fink seemed to be used to being taught a lesson by Magath before, and he didn't dare to disobey. He could only lower his head and mutter something, rushing towards the caravan not far away. You are very strict with Fink, Mr. Magath, Lisi said with a smile. Judging from the state of the two, it seems that this is how they have always gotten along. And Fink had no complaints. Lisi could see that, although he said something inconsistent, he still obeyed Magath's discipline. Everyone is like this when they are young, so someone needs to remind him, Magath said with a smile, which was completely different from his slightly serious attitude just now. He was actually very satisfied with Fink's performance. Fink is an excellent child, Mr. Moriarty. I think so too. Lisi shrugged and pretended not to understand what Magath meant. Recommending Fink so attentively was naturally to give Fink another brighter future. For an ordinary mercenary, in addition to relying on his own strength, it is easier to get the appreciation of the superiors. However, Lisi did not intend to dig Fink, the young leek seedling, away now. After all, Lisi did not know what Fink's future opportunities would be, and rash intervention might not be a good thing for Fink. Seeing that he did not persuade Lisi, Magath sighed slightly in his heart. Although Fink is a young man that everyone in the mercenary group thinks highly of, he is talented and can endure hardships, and the leader also thinks highly of him. But no matter what, there are so many talented mercenaries every year, and how many of them can successfully grow up? Being able to join a noble family, or even the top nobles in the kingdom, even the leader of the White Wolf mercenary group will not stop Fink from taking this opportunity. However, it seems that it is not yet time. Magath did not consider telling Fink the truth and asking him to work hard. Sometimes, who can know the temperament of the big guys? It is better to just let it go and see Fink's luck. Chapter 196 Special Constitution. In the evening, in a camp. After a busy day, the Feast Chamber of Commerce stopped to clean up the camp and prepare to rest. However, the atmosphere today was a little more lively because the mercenaries who were exploring the way ahead had a big harvest today. An adult forest python. It was nearly 10 meters long and weighed 300 or 400 kilograms, enough for everyone in the caravan to have a good meal. Everyone was very happy and greeted Fink in a friendly manner when they passed by. After the leader of the caravan, Luokui, learned about it, he also sent someone to send a small bag of gold coins. Fink was willing to share the prey, but he couldn't just say nothing, and the Feast Chamber of Commerce didn't lack this little money. Fink laughed so hard that he couldn't even close his mouth, but Magath didn't continue to discipline him at this time. As a young man, how could he not be high-spirited? Just suppress him occasionally to make him sober up. Under Magath's guidance, Fink collected the forest python's eyeballs and snake gallbladder and some other magical materials, and gave the rest of the meat to the caravan mates to cook. It's a pity that the forest python has no venom, otherwise the fangs and venom sacs are more precious. The chefs in charge of the caravan were also very happy to have these harvests. They specially sorted out the spices that had been collected for a long time and sprinkled them on the snake soup in the pot, and also put some spices on the skewet and grilled snake meat. On the Fanal continent, most of the spices grow in the elf forest in the south, and the human kingdom in the south also produces a small amount. The kingdom of Feast does not have a place to produce spices, so the caravan needs to transport them from the south. So the price is relatively expensive, and civilians rarely use spices. Fink sat by the campfire, happily boasting to his teammates about his bravery in the battle today, and occasionally distractedly paying attention to the grilled snake meat on the campfire. This is his trophy, and he can't let others take it all. Moriarty, I'm awesome today. Fink patted Lisi's shoulder carelessly, and said with some complacency, it's really good. Lisi said with a smile. Fink's performance in the battle with Lin Mang today really made Lisi look at him with some new eyes. Is he worthy of being the future leader of the Blood Wolf Knights? His performance in the battle was quite solid, and he was very calm, choosing the most reliable and safest way to defeat Lin Mang. Although his choice of timing was still a little immature, as a young mercenary, he performed quite well. Right, I'm awesome. Fink nodded, and then his eyes lit up and he asked, Moriarty, you are also a warrior, right? You should be very strong to be able to follow that adult. Do you want to compete? Fink didn't have any bad intentions, but Lisi was a peer present, and he had always wanted to compete with Lisi. It was just that he just remembered it at this time. Magath, who was standing aside, was stunned when he heard this, and wanted to say something, but quickly swallowed his words. This Moriarty should be as strong as himself, and Fink would definitely suffer. Suffering a loss is a good thing for Fink. But if he remembered correctly, this adult should be a mage, and it would be a bit troublesome if he was really injured. Forget it, I'll just watch. No one noticed the change in Magath's expression, but they all started to make a fuss. Fink also became excited, thinking that if Lisi was not so good later, he could also let him win secretly. Can't let a friend lose so badly. Lisi also smiled. Anyway, there was still time before dinner was ready, so he didn't mind warming up. The most important thing was that he was a little curious about Fink's unusual physique, so he just wanted to test it out. I wonder if there is the secret of Bloodwolf haunting in it. Fink stood up and picked up the spear with great interest. The people around made way for them, and everyone turned into people of fun and watched the show. Only Magath and his teammates smiled bitterly and shook their heads. What's going on? Lisi drew out his sword and stood opposite Fink, looking relaxed. Come on, Moriarty, you make the first move. Fink said to Lisi with high spirits, then I won't be polite. Lisi didn't care, smiled and raised his sword and stepped forward. Come on. Fink also came forward excitedly, as if he wanted to show everyone his style of fighting against the forest python in broad daylight. Not long after, the sparring between the two ended. At first, the onlookers cheered for Fink. After a while, the shouts of the people who were having fun began to slowly subside. In the end, everyone was silent and looked at each other. It was not that the fight between Lisi and Fink was so strange, but it was too ordinary. It was so ordinary that Fink had no chance to resist at all. In terms of strength, speed, fighting skills, reaction speed, etc., Fink was at a disadvantage and was suppressed by Moriarty. At first, everyone thought Fink still had a chance, and Fink himself worked very hard to find an opportunity. But soon, some people with eyesight saw that the two were not at the same level at all. This Moriarty was definitely a silver level strength. Although he looked about the same age as Fink, he was extremely experienced and did not give Fink any chance at all. The fight could have ended quickly, but it was delayed for a long time like playing a game. Lisi did not mean it, but he was very serious. While suppressing Fink, he gradually increased the strength in his hands to suppress Fink, testing the limits of this young warrior. So after Lisi retracted his long sword, Fink finally breathed a sigh of relief, panting heavily and looking much more embarrassed than when he fought with the forest python. I didn't expect you to be so strong. Fink calmed his breath and said with a wry smile, you are also very powerful. Lisi nodded. This was not a consolation, but Lisi's true thoughts. He had already discovered that Fink's body was unusually strong. He had finally exerted some of the strength of a silver level warrior, but Fink still gritted his teeth and persisted. Moreover, Lisi noticed that Fink's body should have something special. It was not obvious when fighting with the forest python during the day, but when Lisi oppressed Fink and squeezed and stimulated his potential just now, Fink's skin began to turn bright red. Unlike the pink color of frostbite, Fink's appearance was more like a manifestation of the blood power of the vampires. Sure enough, his body was very special. It might be related to Bloodwolf haunting. Lisi secretly determined it in his heart, but he did not plan to study it in depth in the short term. First, Fink's ability didn't seem to be developed, it was just a passive manifestation. Second, compared to the ability of Bloodwolf haunting, Lisi's goal for this trip was more attractive to him. However, he could plant a seed first and wait for an opportunity to seize it later. What's more, Fink himself was a talent. Lisi looked at Fink, who was being scolded by Magath, and had an idea in his mind. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197, War on the Border. The next few days were quite dull and boring for Lisi. But for the caravan, this should be the normal state every day. How can a normal caravan encounter danger every day? Li Si also familiarized himself with the operations and precautions of adventure in his previous life, while following the White Wolf mercenary group in the past few days. In general, the difference from the game is not very big, and the various operations are probably not much different from the game. On the contrary, because there are no reading bars and abnormal states in the game, Li Si feels a little simpler and easier. Fink was also, after being easily crushed and defeated by Li Si that day, he shut himself up for a night and returned to his usual state early the next morning. In other words, his attitude towards Li Si became more enthusiastic. He pestered Li Si these days and really wanted to know how Li Si, who was the same age as him, became so powerful. Li Si thought about it, and after obtaining Magath's consent, he began to train Fink during the break. Bang! Li Si exerted his strength suddenly, and the long sword hit the spear in Fink's hand directly. Fink held the trembling long spear tightly with both hands, and couldn't help but leap back a few steps, and then the impact force was eliminated. "You are so strong, Moriarty." Fink rubbed his wrist, and said to Li Si, "Your body is quite tough. How did you train it?" Li Si casually and handsomely played a sword flower, and put the long sword back into the scabbard. "It's nothing special. It's just the bodybuilding technique I practiced with the mercenary group. Do you want to see it?" Fink took out a booklet from somewhere and handed it to Li Si. Li Si took it and looked at it. The name of the booklet was White Wolf Bodybuilding Technique. It seemed to be the exclusive bodybuilding technique of the White Wolf mercenary group. After a simple flip through, Li Si returned the booklet to Fink. After confirming it, it was a common item. For players who have just entered the game, this is still a relatively precious bodybuilding technique. It can improve physical fitness and provide certain attribute values, but it is just like that for Li Si. Moreover, Li Si saw nothing special about him. Other members of the White Wolf mercenary group did not have the extraordinary physical fitness like Fink, so Fink's specialness should be due to his own reasons. In this case, it is not a short-term problem. Li Si stretched and wanted to go back to the carriage to continue lying down. It was not that Li Si was lazy, but after verifying his ideas, he had to seize the time to study the arcane. It was already noon, and the October sun was still a little hot. Other mercenaries came to replace Li Si and others, and the caravan behind also took a short rest on the side of the road. The guys in the caravan were busy feeding the animals in the caravan with water and food, and others also took the time to sit aside and rest for a while. As the caravan gradually moved away from Kangwang City, the population began to gradually become sparse, and the guards and mercenaries accompanying the team gradually began to be more vigilant. Li Si followed Magath to the small carriage belonging to the White Wolf mercenary group. This was Magath's private property, equipped with the luggage and sundries of the mercenary group. Usually, one mercenary was arranged to guard it, and most people still had to rely on their feet. After all, the labor of livestock was still precious. When the caravan was moving forward, there was no car for people to rest. Magath also took out some dry food and water from the car. Everyone ate it hastily to replenish their physical strength. There was still a half-day journey in the afternoon. Li Si thought about it and took out some cakes from the storage ring to share with everyone. The mercenaries of the White Wolf mercenary group looked a little abnormal, but they still took the obviously too delicate cakes. As for Fink, he thanked Li Si hastily and then gobbled it up. In the afternoon, Li Si said goodbye to Fink and others, claiming that the adults had arranged other work for him and he could not continue to follow them. Fink was a little regretful, but still thanked Li Si for his teachings in the past few days. Magath and others also had regretful expressions on their faces, and they didn't know who it was for. After Li Si returned to the carriage, he sat down and shook his head. Was it too early to meet Fink? There was nothing to gain in the past few days. However, Li Si's mentality was very good. Nothing could go as he wished. This could be regarded as a foreshadowing for the future. After a while, the caravan began to move slowly northward again. As the vehicle swayed slightly, Li Si closed his eyes again and immersed himself in the world of Arcane. While Li Si's caravan was moving forward silently, other parts of the Fanal continent were not peaceful. The border between the Kingdom of Fez and the Kingdom of Bertich, the Dukedom of Mackay, This is one of the most important transportation routes between the Kingdom of Fez and the Kingdom of Bertich. Every year, many merchants pass through here, bringing specialties from other parts of the continent to the Kingdom of Bertich, and also bringing specialties from the seaside of the Kingdom of Bertich back to the Kingdom of Fez. With the continuous prosperity of the Kingdom of Fez in recent years, the strong military strength has ensured the safety of the caravans traveling to and from the Kingdom of Fez, which has also made the commercial trade of the Kingdom of Fez, which relies on the Jido River, more and more prosperous. More and more caravans choose to come to the Kingdom of Fez, bringing goods from their hometowns here, and purchasing specialties from other regions. This spontaneous behavior of merchants also led to the gradual increase in the total amount of goods sold from the Kingdom of Fez to the Kingdom of Bertich, far exceeding the value of goods sold by the Kingdom of Bertich to the Kingdom of Fez. In the eyes of the king and nobles of the Kingdom of Bertich, this is tantamount to exploiting their wealth and plundering their resources, which makes them short-sighted. How can they tolerate it? They never thought that as a country on the east coast of Fana, they have an excellent seaport that the Kingdom of Fez coveted, but they have never considered better development of trade, but are only satisfied with collecting high taxes from the people to satisfy their luxurious life. What's even more funny is that they have realized that the Kingdom of Fez is making their wealth through trade, but they have not taken any meaningful resistance measures. Instead, they chose to increase the customs clearance tax at the border. When the Kingdom of Fez also chose to impose reciprocal sanctions and increase tariffs, they couldn't stand it. Without the goods shipped from the Kingdom of Fez, their life of luxury would be greatly affected. It can only be said that the entire ruling class of the Bertich Kingdom is almost completely rotten. Even so, they know that being neighbors with the powerful Kingdom of Fez is a threat to them. So they chose to stockpile a considerable number of troops in the Dukedom of Mackay, which borders the Kingdom of Fez. After all, the Kingdom of Bertich is on the east side of the sea and there is no threat. After King Bertich made such arrangements, he thought he had nothing to worry about, so he continued to have fun in the capital. The most important city in the Dukedom of Mackay, the city of Baru, is the trade and military core of the western border of the Kingdom of Bertich, but now it has lost its former prosperity and bustle. A blood-red sword flag fluttered above the top of the city of Baru. Chapter 198 Neighboring Countries Movements. On the walls of Baru City, the soldiers passing by exuded a solemn atmosphere, as if they had just experienced a battle. A mighty middle-aged man in black armor stood on the top of the city, stroking the slightly mottled wall in front of him, wondering what he was thinking. Lord Baird. A soldier came from not far away, knelt on one knee behind the middle-aged man, and said respectfully, "What's the matter?" Baird asked lightly. This mighty middle-aged man was Milk Baird, the border duke of the Kingdom of Fez, but at this moment he was standing on the wall of Baru City in the Kingdom of Bertich. After receiving the announcement from the kingdom, although he was very confused why the second Prince of Jatan did not send him new information, it didn't matter. Duke Baird personally led the elite troops who had been prepared for a long time. After several days of secret marching, he bypassed the border sentries of the Kingdom of Bertich and directly attacked and occupied Baru City. Although Baird was very confident in his ability and subordinates, and had made perfect preparations in advance, he really didn't expect it to be so easy. As if they were completely defenseless, the Lord and army of Baru City did not expect Baird to attack the city. The heavy troops deployed by the Kingdom of Bertich were disarmed by Baird's men before they could react. The entire siege lasted only more than 10 minutes. Baird had completely controlled the city. None of his men died, except for one who accidentally stepped on a brick and broke his calf during the charge. How outrageous was the defense of Baru City. There were only a few guards who were collecting gate taxes guarding the city. The early warning magic circle and the protective magic circle of the city were not turned on. Baird sent someone to check just now and found that they had been in disrepair for a long time and could not be activated. The soldiers of the Kingdom of Bertich were still sleeping in the barracks. It seemed that they had been training for a long time last night and were still catching up on sleep. They were all caught by Baird's men. Even for Baird, it was more troublesome to arrange for those panicked residents. "Sir, the Lord of Baru City, Duke Mackay, has been brought here. Do you want to see him now? Bring him here." Baird waved his hand and told his subordinates to hurry up. He couldn't waste much time in Baru City. Looking at the situation, if he could continue the attack before the Birditch Kingdom reacted, he could still gain a lot of benefits. Not long after, a round, white fat man came behind Baird, pushed by a group of soldiers. Two soldiers kicked the inside of the white fat man's knees, and the white fat man suddenly lay behind Baird. "Sir, Duke McKay has been brought here." A soldier bowed and said to Baird. Baird turned around and looked at this fat pig with skin as white and tender as a girl, with a hint of disgust in his eyes. As a border duke, although Baird was also pampered at ordinary times, when he got along with his subordinates, he would definitely eat and wear the same clothes and set an example. On the other hand, Duke McKay Baird is not such a useless noble. He has many scars from fighting monsters. He originally thought that this battle with the Birditch Kingdom might add a few more merits, but he didn't expect that the Birditch Kingdom was worse than he imagined. "Baird, you actually dared to start a war." Duke McKay, who had just cowered in front of the soldiers, seemed to become tough again when he saw Baird's figure. "Let me go quickly, otherwise the king and the Church of the Gods will not let you go." Baird sighed and looked at Duke McKay as if he was looking at a dying fat pig. He kicked Duke McKay hard, and his body was like being hit by a battering ram, and he smashed into the city wall beside him. Duke McKay didn't expect Baird to actually attack him. It was only because he didn't use his precious treasures that he used them, otherwise this kick would have killed him. Baird took a spear from a soldier nearby and stabbed it into the bricks on Duke McKay's face. He said in a calm tone, "Long time no see, McKay, let's have a chat." Looking at the spear beside his face with a pale face, McKay felt the deep evil spirit on Baird and screamed, "You can't do this. I'm the Duke of the Birditch Kingdom. I demand due treatment. I want to redeem myself." Baird patted McKay's face with his right hand and said with a smile, "Well, the Duke of the Birditch Kingdom? It's a pity that you won't be soon. After all, there is no kingdom. What's the use of you as a nobleman? You actually..." McKay seemed to realize something and looked at Baird in disbelief. "So, cooperate well, maybe I can spare your life." Baird didn't hesitate to say what he just said. "After all, only facts can make others surrender the fastest." "Point," I said. Duke McKay collapsed into a pile of mud, no longer having the slightest idea of resistance. At the same time, Duke Ram of the Kingdom of Fez also attacked the Kingdom of Birditch from another direction. After 100 years, the flames of war were ignited again in the east of Fanal Continent. Dylan Kingdom, in the north of the Kingdom of Fez. This is a human kingdom between the Kingdom of Fez and the northern icefield of Fanal Continent. Because it is located in the north, it has a vast area and sparse population. Similarly, the people living in the Kingdom of Dylan are tough and heroic by nature. The most common here are berserkers and monks. The current king of the Kingdom of Dylan, Luca Dylan, is also a wise leader. He deeply understands the current predicament of the Kingdom of Dylan, because most of the kingdom belongs to bitter and cold land, and there are relatively few places suitable for planting, so every year it needs to buy food from the Kingdom of Fez in the south through trade. However, what is better than the Kingdom of Birditch is that the Kingdom of Dylan is rich in minerals, and there are many kinds of northern monsters. The trade profits of precious materials, minerals, and weapons and equipment are enough to meet the needs of the Kingdom of Dylan. But Luca Dylan was not satisfied. When he was young, he traveled to the southern countries. He hoped that the Dylan Kingdom could also have the land that was filled with warm sunshine all year round. "You mean, there was an assassination at the holy festival of the Brilliant Light City in the Kingdom of Fez?" The Kingdom of Fez claimed that it was the Kingdom of Birditch who did it and had declared war. After hearing the report from his subordinates, Lucard stood up from the throne in shock, walked back and forth, and then asked, "What is the situation? Did the Kingdom of Fez really send troops? What is going on in the Church of the Gods?" The young minister was not surprised. He knew that His Majesty the King had been waiting for such a change for a long time. "It is not clear whether the troops will be sent. I have arranged people to investigate. The Church of the Gods has remained silent. At present, no high-ranking church official has expressed his attitude towards the declaration of war by the Kingdom of Fez." Chapter 199 Kuka City. Lucard heard this, but he did not calm down, but became more excited. This is an opportunity. It is an opportunity for the Kingdom of Dylan to rise. There is indeed a problem with the Church of the Gods. They should have given up the idea of mediating disputes between countries and watched the war begin. Thinking of this, Lucas could not help himself and turned to his newly appointed minister Anna and said, "The first thing is to continue to observe the attitude of the Church of the Gods, especially the views of those in our country, and find a time to test it. The second thing is to hurry up to find out whether the Kingdom of Fis has really declared war on the Kingdom of Bertich and the latest war situation. The third thing is to send people to investigate the situation in the north of the Kingdom of Fis, including information such as the movements of the nobles and the status of the army. It should be as detailed as possible. This is very important. The fourth thing is to start collecting all kinds of war preparations now. Don't care about the cost. The fifth thing is to find an excuse to stop the export of ore and weapons and equipment, and this should be done quickly." King Lucas spoke very quickly. His mind was very active now. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he didn't seize it, he would regret it for the rest of his life. However, since Anna was appointed as a personal minister, he must have his own strengths. Lucas remembered all of his orders. "Hurry up and arrange these things, and then summon all the ministers here. I need to hear their opinions." "Yes, Your Majesty." Anna nodded in response, and then hurriedly left to implement His Majesty's request. Lucas walked to the window, looking at the scenery outside in October. It was still autumn, but the bleak cold wind had begun to blow, and most of the leaves on the trees had fallen. White dots began to fall from the sky, and Lucas stretched out his palm to catch a few. Looking at the white snowflakes turning transparent in his palm, Lucas clenched his fist tightly, as if he wanted to catch something. "Father, you watch." Lucas looked at the grey sky and silently said, "I will fulfill your last wish." At the same time, many human kingdoms on the Fanal continent received the information that the Kingdom of Fis had declared war on the Kingdom of Bertich, but the friction between many countries stopped. It seems that everyone is watching the progress of the war between the Kingdom of Fis and the Kingdom of Bertich, waiting for the end of this prelude. It is as strangely quiet as the sea before the storm. The war in the Kingdom of Fis has nothing to do with Lyci now. The information of the war has not been properly circulated to the north. The caravan where Lyci is still in the daily peace. Today, the Fis caravan came to Kuka city in the north of the kingdom. This is the territory of Viscount Kuka, which also means that the caravan has officially left the hinterland of the kingdom and entered the northern territory of the kingdom. After the caravan settled in the hotel, where they usually live, Lyci waved goodbye to Fink and others, packed up and went out. His destination today is the mercenary tavern in Kuka city. This is also the first time Lyci has entered the city since he started his journey. After all, the caravan was delayed for a while before, and it is necessary to hurry up. After all, the winter in the north is also quite troublesome. Moreover, the goods carried by the caravan cannot be sold at a high price in the hinterland of the kingdom. It is better not to waste time in the hinterland of the kingdom and go directly to the north. Now, the caravan will stay in Kuka city for a short period of time, rest for 2 days, and then continue to move north after replenishing supplies. However, Lyci does not need to worry about these chores of the caravan, as he just happens to have something to do. Go recruit players. After entering the game of Shenqi, players cannot choose their birthplaces and are immediately born in the human kingdom of Fanal continent. It is not time for them to explore other regions. The more prosperous the place, the more players are born, but it does not mean that there are no players in other places. It is okay to be born in a human city, but if you are born in a small village, you are very unlucky. For players born in remote places, if they have the opportunity, they will gather in the city, where the regional center is located. This is relatively easy for them, and it is very difficult to cross the region to the capital Kangwang city. Kuka city is one of the places where players gather in this area. Lyci went to the mercenary tavern, where the players are stationed to see if there are any unexpected gains. The mercenary tavern in Kuka city is the same as that in Kangwang city, and is in the same building as the mercenary guild. But after all, it is just an ordinary city stronghold in the north, and the mercenary guild here is just a 2-story building. The black walls and obviously smaller windows have a bit of the style of northern architecture. The mercenaries here prefer to drink in the tavern to kill time. After all, the winter here is colder, and strong liquor is a necessity for mercenaries. Lisi pushed open the thick wooden door and entered the mercenary tavern. Warm air and noisy sounds came to his face, and the orange-red firewood had been burning in the large fireplace beside the wall. Lisi had been to the mercenary guild in Kuka City once in his previous life, and had some impressions. Unlike the mercenary guild in Kangwang City, the first floor here is all taverns. Many mercenaries sit around small round tables enjoying beer and food, and the second floor is where mercenaries accept commissions. Squeezing through the mercenaries, Lisi came to the bar of the tavern. Just a moment ago, Lisi had noticed the figure of a player in the tavern. It can only be said that they are worthy of being players. If it weren't for their names and obviously young faces, Lisi would not be able to recognize the difference between them and those old mercenaries. They were wearing the same clothes as the old mercenaries and drinking noisily. Except for some players with unique tastes, most of the players' faces are still relatively young and beautiful. Oh, the one who climbed onto the stage to dance a striptease after getting drunk doesn't count. It's simply an eyesore. Even with Lisi's battle-hardened eyes, he almost couldn't help it. This scene would have been quite explosive in Lisi's previous life. However, the mercenaries around seemed to be drunk, and they surrounded the player and cheered loudly. Can it be said that they are birds of a feather? Please give me a glass of beer, Lisi said to the waiter standing at the bar. Okay, please wait. The middle-aged man in the waiter's uniform said with a smile, and soon brought Lisi a wooden cup filled with dark yellow wine. Lisi picked up the glass and took a sip of beer. He sat at the bar and asked the waiter, is there anything new and interesting happening in the city recently? With the start of the 1.0 plot, the kingdom of Fez began to become unstable. Lisi was also paying attention to the collection of intelligence during his travels. Although he knew about the major events in the future, he was not clear about the side plots in each area. It would be good if he could collect some useful intelligence. Chapter 200. Copy, Clarice's Revenge. Recently, except for the addition of some people to the guild, there really is nothing special, the waiter recalled, while wiping the cup. Many people came to the mercenary guild to gather intelligence, including passing mercenaries and caravans. But there is one new thing. The waiter continued to wipe the cup, but paused for a moment. Lisi flicked his right index finger, and a silver coin fell accurately into the pocket of the waiter's black vest. The waiter heard the crisp sound of the silver coin and smiled. Viscount Kuka has been a little irritated recently, and it seems to be related to his daughter. Lisi looked up at the middle-aged waiter and asked, what happened? The waiter clicked his tongue, as if he regretted that Lisi did not give more silver coins, so he had to continue that Miss Liz Kuka was going to be engaged to the eldest son of Count Solo's family in the north. It was said that it was the day before yesterday, but then something unexpected happened. Accident? Lisi frowned. The name Liz Kuka sounded familiar to him. Could it be an important character in the plot? The castle of Viscount Kuka was quite lively that day, but I didn't go to see it. But I heard that the engagement ceremony was temporarily terminated, and Viscount Kuka also sent guards to block the city gates, which were not lifted until the next day. At this time, the waiter lowered his voice, leaned forward slightly, and said to Lisi, it is said that they are looking for someone. So many people guess that Miss Liz Kuka ran away from marriage. Run away from marriage? This word is a bit special. Lisi suddenly remembered when he heard the name Liz Kuka. Liz Kuka is not the name of a plot character. In other words, Liz Kuka was remembered by players as the background of a dungeon. The name of that dungeon is Claire's Revenge. Yes, it is not Liz Kuka's revenge, because she herself was gone before the players came into contact with it. This is a torturous, sad and bloody story, so I won't go into details. Just know that Liz Kuka is a noble lady who is unwilling to obey the arrangements of her family. She has beautiful expectations for love, so with the help of her friend Claire, she escaped from Viscount Kuka's castle on the night of her engagement. But Viscount Kuka was unwilling to let his daughter go, and sent people to capture Liz back. In the end, Liz was accidentally injured during the escape, and finally died of her injuries, while Claire escaped from the guards' pursuit and disappeared. Originally, this matter ended here, but a few years later, Claire returned to Kuka City, determined to kill Viscount Kuka to avenge her lover. Yes, Claire is a girl, but she and Liz don't know why. The two love each other. Lisi did not comment on their relationship, but the silver level dungeon, Klez's Revenge, was a more interesting dungeon. This dungeon was different from the normal dungeon and had a special mechanism. In the dungeon, the player needed to help Klez sneak into Viscount Kuka's castle and look for opportunities to kill Viscount Kuka. Because of the particularity of the dungeon scene, unless the player was gold level and broke through with a Musou, it would be impossible to successfully pass the level under the siege of many guards and silver level strongmen. So to speak, the plot of this dungeon seemed to have just begun. Liz just ran away from her marriage and had not been seriously injured to death. Klez was still there and had not sold her soul to the devil in hell. That was a bit interesting. I wonder if the ring is in Klez's hand now? Lisi smiled and flicked another silver coin to the waiter to show his gratitude. Yiao Xiaoxing was sitting at a small table in the corner, holding a glass of beer and drinking it in small sips. His brows furrowed, and he carefully felt the beer stimulating his tongue. This brewing method is really rough, and there are too many impurities. But the aroma of wheat is very strong. Is it because the materials used for brewing are very good? Hey, could it be the influence of the so-called supernatural power that makes the quality of wheat different from mine? At this moment, Yiao Xiaoxing was like a professional brewer tasting the beer in front of him. He is also this profession in reality and has a fanatical hobby for brewing. After entering the game Shenqi, he found that the game can actually simulate taste and smell. Tasting the delicacies of this world made him very happy. So as soon as he had savings, after completing the requirements for promotion, he would use them to taste all kinds of fine wines in the tavern. In addition to playing games, he has another goal in this world, which is to taste the fine wines of this world and brew the fine wines of his own heart. As for his friend going crazy, he didn't care. There are always a few hours every day, and he is used to it. At this time, his friend Wushan touched him and poked his arm. What's wrong? Are you crazy after drinking? Yiao Xiaoxing, who was tasting beer, glanced at him and didn't want to pay attention to him. Yes, you can't use your real name when playing games, but you're exaggerating. Sometimes Yiao Xiaoxing really admires this friend he just met. In order to circumvent the restrictions of the game, he put on 5 or 6 sets of clothes and danced a striptease. The key action is extremely ugly, twisting around like an earthworm, which is eye-catching. I was experimenting and collecting intelligence, understand? Hey, let's not talk about this, there's business. Wushan pulled Yiao Xiaoxing and pointed in the direction of the bar. What's wrong? Yiao Xiaoxing looked at the person sitting at the bar, a little confused about the situation. Is there anything strange? Isn't he much more normal than the person next to him? Look at that man. Doesn't he look like Lisi from Kangwang City mentioned on the forum? Wushan was quite serious and added. A little bit, but isn't that Lisi mage? Why is he wearing this? And he came to a place so far away from Kangwang City? Yiao Xiaoxing was a little uncertain. He did know Lisi, and he was very popular on the forum a few days ago. Yiao Xiaoxing looked at the screenshots of the video uploaded to the player forum, and his blood was boiling. He wanted to fly directly to Kangwang City. Let's go and give it a try. It won't take that much time anyway, Wushan suggested. As an intelligence dealer who was active in other games before, he was very concerned about the intelligence of such important people. Yiao Xiaoxing hesitated for a moment and decided to ask. It wouldn't cost him anything anyway. It would be great if he could get the membership of the White Dove Chamber of Commerce. Since they had made up their minds and no longer hesitated, the two of them went straight to Lisi and asked softly, "Excuse me, are you a Lord Marquis Kane?" The handsome man sitting at the bar turned around and asked curiously, "It's me. But how did you recognize me?" "I found an anime, The Burial of Flilian. It was really good. The battle scene was in line with my imagination of Magician's Battle. The BGM was also good, with a Western fantasy feel. Great. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.